Chapter 1818. Dad, don't underestimate me. Kids these days are very knowledgeable. Jiang Beibei put her hands behind her back and said, "Let's not talk about cultivation. Let's not talk about cultivators. Even for mortals, according to the research of scientists, the cells in the human body only need 200 days to die. However, humans won't die because they can constantly regenerate their cells. This is equivalent to saying that after 20 days, this mortal is no longer the same as the original mortal from a physiological point of view. But isn't he the original him?" She looked at Jiang Tian motionlessly, as if waiting for Jiang Tian's answer. Jiang Tian nodded. "But why do you think it's a new boat and not an old one? This is a new sofa and not an old one. In essence, it's a change of composition. Those tourists don't know the inside story, so they think it's an old sofa. Many people were taking photos here just now," Jiang Beibei argued. Jiang Tian was shocked. Lightning flashed again and illuminated the fog. "I understand now. I finally understand." He looked up at the 9 heavens and his eyes gradually deepened. His gaze was as sharp as a sword. Zhao Xueqing wasn't used by the immortal lord to seal the 10,000 orifices demonic infant. Her body and the 10,000 orifices demonic infant were born together with Star Destroyer. No wonder Zhao Xueqing's birth was so strange. Her mother didn't have any sexual activity and suddenly got pregnant. The 10,000 orifices demonic infant needs 13 umbilical cords, but Zhao Xueqing also needs 13 umbilical cords when she was pregnant with Jiang Beibei. Star Destroyer is just a simulation of the womb of a woman with the immortal body of the immortal phoenix. It's like 2 parts combined to form a Zhao Xueqing with the 10,000 orifices demonic infant. She bears the karma on behalf of a certain supreme being. Ordinary people fear karma and mighty people fear karma. Even Buddha and Tao ancestor who have thousands of Tao in one body is also karma. The more karma one had, the greater the calamity one would suffer. It would be difficult to transcend and live forever. Only by severing karma or allowing another to take his place would he be able to transcend the Taos of the 3 dimensions and truly attain immortality without cause or effect, without life or death, without beginning or end. And Zhao Xueqing is the substitute of this mighty person, the Nirmanakya. For Tao integration perfected immortals, 3,000 years would be spring, 3,000 years would be autumn, and 10,000 years would be a single spring and autumn. However, when their lifespan was exhausted, they would return to the heavens. The Hongmeng god had created a world and formed a universe. How terrifying was his power! However, the universe was still not eternal. It was rumored that at the peak of the Big Bang, everything in the world would turn into a soup of particles. Everything would be in a state of chaos before returning to the singularity. This Hongmeng god would also be implicated by his own world's great Tao and return to dust. This Black Hand is truly a supreme almighty. Jiang Tian suddenly sighed, and his mood became even more gloomy. Although he had heard of this realm before, even when he ascended to Hongmeng, he did not dare to covet it. "Do you understand? Are you scared? You should have understood long ago. You should have been scared long ago." Suddenly, a strange laughter sounded. It was as ear-piercing as the cry of an old crow. Jiang Beibei also saw it. A strange person suddenly appeared next to Jiang Tian like a ghost. He trembled slightly and lowered his head to laugh. His hair and beard were long and messy, and they intertwined with each other to cover his face. Only a pair of eyes filled with confusion and fear could be seen. He looked at the blue and clear sky in a daze. "Dad, this strange person," Jiang Beibei was so frightened that she stumbled back and sat on the ground. Her small mouth cracked open and tears rolled down. "Why are you crying? I'm your dad too." The strange old man glared at Jiang Beibei fiercely. "Beibei, don't be afraid." Jiang Tian got up and hugged Jiang Beibei in his arms. He smiled and comforted her softly. "This is Dad's dead self. It's my life's memory and experience. You can also see it as an external manifestation of my immortal will. He revealed his true self to talk to me and solve my problems together. Ha, I'm indeed the fear and worry in his heart. I'm the desire and worry in his heart. I'm the anger and hatred in his heart. I'm the bestial and demonic thoughts in his heart. But it's hard to control. If I go crazy, I won't even recognize my own family and kill you." The strange person suddenly turned his head and glared fiercely at Jiang Beibei with his turbid eyes. He bared his teeth and threatened her mischievously. Jiang Beibei realized that the strange person looked very similar to her dad and was so fierce. She couldn't help but cry out in fear. "Dad has become old and ugly." Tang Linglong and Lu Yiting heard the commotion and rushed in. When they saw this strange scene, they were so frightened that they turned pale. "I can't do anything to you. I can crush you to pieces now or suppress you in my heart. Don't mess around anymore." Jiang Tian's true body berated. My heart aches for scaring my daughter. After all, she's my flesh and blood. I'm just playing. Why are you so nervous?" He suddenly saw Lu Yiting and Tang Linglong. His eyes were burning with greed. He laughed and said, "My lord, these two girls are so smooth and they're interested in you. Why don't you accept them? You're just pretending. Take them all into your harem. Let's do more exercise tonight." Lu Yiting blushed and looked at Tang Linglong in surprise. Where did this strange person come from? Why does he look so similar to Jiang Tian? In the cultivation world, it's called passing self. It corresponds to ego and Tao ego. According to my teacher, when one is in the transcendent mortal stage and experiences the mortal world, demonic thoughts will appear. Tang Linglong said softly. Lu Yiting was puzzled. She had little contact with cultivation. Not many people on Earth knew that the transcendent mortal stage was a step before reaching the deity transformation stage. Tang Linglong scratched her head, thought for a while, and said, "You don't understand cultivation. But you can understand it as the ID, ego, and superego in philosophy. The ID is the combination of all kinds of instinctive impulses and evil thoughts in Jiang Tian's heart. It doesn't understand the law of morality and blindly pursues satisfaction without caring about anything." "Oh, I understand. It's like multiple personality disorder, but Jiang Tian can show it. But it turns out that Jiang Tian also has thoughts about us." Lu Yiting was very interested. She giggled and blushed, revealing a touch of charm. "Who doesn't have dirty thoughts in their heart? He's not a god. You're so beautiful, how can he not have any thoughts about you?" Tang Linglong smiled and said, "However, the old saying is right. Obscenity is not about the heart, but about the heart. No one is perfect. This is an instinct. At least with my teacher's current cultivation, he can't see through it. It's just that my teacher has deep feelings for Sister Qingya, so he can suppress it. The reason why I'm showing my past self now is not because of love and to get rid of my inner demons. It should be related to the ancient arrangements of the mighty figures of the celestial world. To be careful, I need to look at my heart and soul to see through everything." Tisk tisidith. You two little girls are smiling so beautifully and shamelessly. Why don't we have fun together tonight? The vanishing self, Freak stood up, his eyes burning with passion. "That's enough." Jiang Tian blushed and shouted. The strange man jumped 3 feet high and said angrily, "What are you shouting for? Can't you enjoy yourself after fighting for a lifetime? Continue playing and dancing." At this time, another figure suddenly appeared. He was wearing a Taoist robe and was as handsome as a god. He was bathed in immortal light and divine light, exuding a sacred aura like that of an immortal Buddha. He stepped forward and stepped on the strange man. He flicked his sleeves and said coldly, "Evil creature, you only think about dirty things all day. If you continue to pester me, I'll stomp you to death." At this time, Jiang Tian's true self, and past self appeared at the same time. One was open and aboveboard, like a god or a Buddha, as emotionless as the great Tao. The other was simple and unadorned, lingering in the mortal world, but cold and restrained. The other was timid, wretched, and impulsive, but there was a bit of affection and cuteness. Chapter 18-19. Tao, spare me, I won't do it again. I won't do it again. The eccentric was trembling in fear, but he didn't forget to wink at Lu Yiting and Su Qianxi. He was so naughty and wretched that the two girls didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That Dao only appeared for a brief moment, and after suppressing the strange man, it instantly turned into specks of light that filled the air and disappeared. Lu Yiting saw that the eccentric seemed to be more honest. She smiled and said, "I've asked Shen Lu and his wife to have dinner together tonight." But Jiang Tian nodded slightly and went out with the eccentric. In order to let Jiang Tian meet more acquaintances, they chose the restaurant of an old friend. This old friend was Sister Li, the widow of an anti-narcotics police officer. Back then, she used to help Jiang Tian's family. After Jiang Tian became famous, he also helped her deal with Yi Wudao's son, Yi Ji, who kept harassing her. In the end, when he fought with Yi Tianru, he also uprooted Yi Wudao's entire family. He also bought a piece of land for Sister Li. Sister Li worked with other businessmen and developed this place into a food street, including her own restaurant. Elder Sister Li had prepared a private room for Jiang Tian. Right now, she was living a very happy life and was very grateful to Jiang Tian. Her son had grown up and was also a police officer, but he had already cultivated and was a qi refinement expert. He even specially rushed over to offer Jiang Tian a toast. This made Jiang Tian feel a faint sense of gratification, and he sighed ruefully. Shen Lu and his wife's son could already learn to walk, and he looked just like Shen Lu. Although Shen Li's shares in many consortiums were almost all plundered when the monsters wreaked havoc on the earth, and he was now only a middle-level person, he was still very satisfied with everything in front of him. This was a very happy family. Being with these simple people, Jiang Tian felt that he had never been so calm since he was reborn. Memories came to his mind. These memories belonged to his previous life, when he hadn't been taken away by the immortal monarch and set foot in the central galaxy. At that time, the stars in the sky were just theoretical stars in his eyes. They didn't know how prosperous the cultivation civilization was there and how deep and terrifying the sea of stars was. In his previous life, Jiang Tian was like an ignorant child. For the next few days, Shen Lu and his wife accompanied Jiang Tian to play in Linzhou. On this day, Tang Linglong received a call saying that Mr. Tang Guizhu was critically ill and was on his deathbed. Jiang Tian, Tang Linglong, and their daughter went to visit the Tang family. Tang Guizhu was already very old. Although he had taken a lot of elixirs over the years, it was still difficult to beat fate. He was already on the verge of death. Of course, with Jiang Tian's mana, he could still prolong his life if he forcefully used it. However, Tang Guizhu did not allow Jiang Tian to do so. "My physical body has already decayed. Even if I forcefully extend it, I won't be able to last long. I'll have to trouble teacher Jiang to do it again. Let's just leave it to fate." Tang Guizhu was very open-minded. He held Jiang Tian's hand and said softly, "Now, the 6 paths of reincarnation had been established. Yi Tianren was in charge of the reincarnation of Yin souls. Those who had meritorious deeds, even if they died, had a chance to continue their consciousness. They could either enter the underworld and become a ghost cultivator's messenger of death, or they could be received by the messenger of death and be reincarnated." Sure enough, Jiang Tian saw a ghost cultivator's messenger of death. He was already waiting in the ward. However, he was a ghost cultivator and his mana was not bad. If he wasn't a cultivator like Jiang Tian, ordinary people wouldn't be able to see him. At the moment when Tang Guizhu's physical body died, the ghost cultivator's messenger of death used a magic tool to hook Tang Guizhu's soul. He came to a paper boat and carefully nourished it with the magic tool. Then, he sat on the paper boat and crossed the sky with him. About 10 minutes later, in the delivery room of Linzhou's First People's Hospital, there was a loud and clear cry of a baby. The family immediately cheered. When the baby was carried out by the nurse, they all scrambled to surround him. This family was a rich family. Moreover, they had already embarked on the path of cultivation. In such a family, if it wasn't for the fact that the baby's fate was full of misfortune, he shouldn't have suffered too much. The baby looked around curiously. Although his eyes were very pure, there was actually a trace of age in them. However, this age quickly passed away, and he once again became confused and ignorant. "He's finally gone." Jiang Tian retracted his gaze and sighed softly. Tang Guizhu was once a giant. He had made contributions in both the military and the martial arts world. Yi Tianren and the messengers of death of the underworld wanted to help him reincarnate. They used their mana to nourish him and deliberately protect the memories of his previous life. However, they still didn't succeed. At least, they didn't succeed completely. Jiang Tian rebuilt the underworld and reconstructed the reincarnation cycle in order to use the experiences and memories of the deceased's previous life. However, this 6 paths of reincarnation was, after all, man-made. There were still various loopholes and flaws. The success rate was less than 1%. At this moment, there was only a very faint wisp of remnant soul in the baby's mind. Furthermore, as his memories grew, his past memories might very well be completely suppressed and vanish into thin air. What is life and what is death? Hearing the sorrowful cries of the Tang family, recalling Tang Guizhu's life, and hearing the joyous chatter of the newborn family, full of anticipation for the baby's future, Jiang Tian sighed softly. Was the baby now another Tang Guizhu? I think it's unfair to that child. The strange man revealed a disdainful expression and snorted coldly. He was originally a brand new life. Why did you forcibly inject the memories of an old man into him? Fortunately, although he is a branch, when the old tree dies in the future, he will be a new tree. Kong Teichu, you are not a mighty figure, but you want to imitate the actions of a mighty figure. You want to manipulate the fate of others and use their lives as chess pieces. Isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? What is life? What is death? Jiang Tian sighed again, as if comprehending. It's very simple. The eccentric scratched his dirty scalp. Suddenly, he pointed at a puddle under his feet and said, "It's raining heavily today. The rainwater is life, but when it enters this puddle, it becomes stagnant water. But is the water really dead? It will turn into clouds and become rain again in the future. This cycle repeats. But you can't say that the rain in the future is today's rain." Lightning once again lit up in Jiang Tian's heart when he heard the words of the vanishing self, eccentric. Moreover, this lightning was even brighter and longer lasting than before. Clusters of fog regarding the comprehension of life and death were completely illuminated. Jiang Tian's heart suddenly became bright. At this moment, he had almost succeeded in becoming immortal. His understanding of the mortal world and the great Tao of life and death had reached a very deep level. It could be said that if he wanted to enter the soul formation realm, the success rate would be at least 50%. However, he still didn't stop comprehending. Instead, he continued to experience the mortal world and the great Tao. Holding his daughter's hand, he strolled in Linzhou with the eccentric, enjoying the rare peace without any impatience. The strange man who suddenly disappeared pointed at a huge strange tree and said, "That's right. Jiangdan, look at that tree. What is a leaf? What is a branch? What is a stem? What is a root? Is that a tree or a forest?" That tree was a very common banyan tree in the Lingnan area. It was originally very old, and with the nourishment after the recovery of spiritual qi, it had grown especially large. There were countless branches on the branches, and many of the roots hung down to the ground and sank into the soil. Jiang Tian saw that the real trunk of the tree had been riddled with holes by lightning, sun, and insects. There was not much vitality. However, the new roots were vigorous and full of vitality. Some of them had even torn off the roots and vines of the old tree and formed new independent trees. What is a leaf? What is a branch? What is a stem? What is a root? Is this a tree or a forest? Jiang Tian sighed. His eyes were shining. For the next few days, Jiang Tian and the eccentric sat under the tree to comprehend. They didn't meditate but stood and sat casually. It was very relaxing. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The heavy rain poured down. Jiang Tian and the eccentric were drenched, but they still stayed under the big banyan tree, unwilling to leave. I have an answer. Whether it is the ship of Theseus, the cycle of life and death, or the primary and secondary branches, I have my own answer. Whether it is right or wrong, I have an answer. A few days later, Jiang Tian seemed to have understood something. His eyes were filled with joy, and he felt that his soul was much clearer. He got up, shook off the leaves on his body, chuckled, and walked into the distance. Chapter 1820. The prosperity of the mortal world, the fresh lives, the companions, the support of each other, all kinds of fun and leisure. This life belongs to us. No matter what happens in the future, we can't let the grand cultivators take it away or disturb our state of mind. That was how Jiang Tian felt. I have a sword in my hand and I can kill all the gods and Buddhas in the world. Suddenly, Jiang Tian felt an unprecedented fighting spirit surging in his heart and he couldn't help but shout. At this moment, the last bit of doubt in his mind was also gone. His heart became lively again, as if the dust had been washed away. In the distance, Tang Linglong and Lu Ying looked at each other and smiled. They seemed to have seen the old Jiang Tian come back. Then, Jiang Tian started to prepare for his departure from Earth. This time, Jiang Tian only took his daughter and the black dog with him. The universe seemed to be safe, but it was actually extremely dangerous. Apart from the orderly cultivation planet regions, most of the places were still chaotic barren areas. Besides, there were also a lot of universe beasts that weren't tamed by humans and were devouring energy and lives everywhere. Jiang Tian's trip this time had already gone beyond the Milky Way and several galaxies, which was much longer than the Beidou expedition to Earth. Such a long interstellar journey would be dangerous even for soul formation cultivators. Those cultivators would only be a burden. The black dog was a purebred purple golden true dragon. Even though it was weak and timid at the moment, it could definitely resist. In fact, Fu Heishui and Fu Heishui also wanted to go to the central galaxy with Jiang Tian to find the mother bat to continue their lineage. However, ancestral patriarch Shisha of the Ophiuchus constellation told the two brothers that there was a divine bat clan in the Ophiuchus constellation. There wasn't a single male in the clan and they had been living with the art of creation all these years. The two of them immediately ignored Jiang Tian and hurried there. Besides, many soul formation grand cultivators in the Little South Heaven planet region had also sent news that the immortal emperor had indeed fulfilled his promise. The graveyards of the deity fiends on all the planets had been adjusted and repaired. The violent planets like the third planet of the South Gate had also returned to normal. In the foreseeable future, the little southern sky star zone would be the most stable and suitable place for cultivation in the entire Milky Way. It was even equivalent to the edge of the central galaxy. Under such circumstances, bringing Earth cultivators like Tang Linglong or the new heavenly court into the central galaxy was not worth it. Moreover, Earth had become the cultivation core of the entire little southern heaven grand star zone. The many starry sky spirit guiding arrays set up by the immortal emperor were running like eternal stars. Vast and surging spiritual energy was drawn from the third South Gate, the Ophiuchus constellation, and the immortal demon's stellar graveyard in the Fomalhaut constellation and continuously poured into Earth. The tide of spirit chi swept across the land, and the laws and great Tao continued to strengthen, nourishing this awakening ancient planet. Jiang Tian believed that Earth's peak period had yet to come. The current Earth was like a toddler learning how to walk. It was far from growing into its prime. But he couldn't not bring his daughter along. She was the continuation of Zhao Xueqing's life, and also his caring little jacket. Since she was born, Jiang Tian had rarely been with her, which made Jiang Tian feel very guilty. When Jiang Tian left, it was already after the spring festival. Nobody saw him off, so as to avoid the sadness of separation. And in those few months, Jiang Tian had almost traveled all over the world and said goodbye to everyone he needed to say goodbye to. The sound of firecrackers could be heard and the snow couldn't cover the lights. Jiang Tian had his hands behind his back and Jiang Beibei was riding a big black dog that looked like a pony, walking on the street of Sidoni together. There were pedestrians everywhere. Some were rushing to restaurants, while others were looking at the Dharma artifacts on the stalls on both sides of the street. The neon lights of the shops were reflected in the river, flowing slowly and bustling. People were coming and going. It was very lively. Jiang Tian was wearing a blue robe and a wooden hairpin. He walked slowly with his hands behind his back, looking around as if he had already blended in. Every day, Sidoni took in a huge amount of resources. Resources from countless planets came to Earth from all directions in the abandoned planet region, then went to other planets through Earth. There were many cultivators and nascent soul cultivators on Earth, as if they had returned to the era of overlords in the ancient times. Every step was a memory. Jiang Tian seemed to have returned to that time. He had fought side by side with Zhao Xueqing again and again, conquering and killing for this land. On the left, there were couples walking on the street, mothers holding their children's hands, young men and women hugging passionately under the blooming fireworks, and gluttons looking for delicious food. They were so real, and the mortal world was so real. Jiang Tian suddenly felt a bit reluctant. He also understood why Zhao Xueqing had decided to give in at the last moment and follow the immortal monarch. The mortals of this world loved delicious food, were passionate about life, chased after charm, calculated benefits, and thought about things. They had all kinds of emotions. They were not elegant and otherworldly. They were not like those so-called almighty giants whose hearts were as cold as iron and as steady as a rock. However, they lived like real people. This world was too beautiful. It was worth facing thousands of soldiers and horses, and it was also worth enduring humiliation and dragging out an ignoble existence. It would also become better in the future. That's strange. Since when did the abandoned planet region become so orderly? 3,000 years ago, I passed by the Ophiuchus region. The cultivators there would draw their swords at the slightest disagreement. There was no order to speak of. But when we went to the Ophiuchus region, they started to restrain the power and gradually formed a kingdom of cultivators. A middle-aged man in a blue Taoist robe stroked his beard as he looked around curiously. The Milky Way is very far from the core of the universe. There's no civilization and order. It's always been called the abandoned planet region and the graveyard of the deities and demons. It's isolated from the world. How did it become so prosperous? I heard that they're forming the Little Southern Sky Planet Region Federation group with the solar system as the core. The entire Little Southern Sky Planet region will be peaceful forever, and communication and development will be the theme for a while. That's really rare. A girl in the prime of her youth spoke softly. She looked extremely charming and had a strange expression on her face. According to my investigation, a genius called Kong Teichu was born. Although he's a nascent soul cultivator, he has the power of a half-saint. He might be the reincarnation of a grand cultivator. Another young man in golden armor was apparently the core of the three. There seemed to be talismans flashing in his eyes as he spoke with a deep voice. Kong Teichu is so powerful. If our divine prince takes him in as a subordinate, won't we have another powerful general? The middle-aged man in a robe and the charming woman exclaimed together. Their eyes almost popped out in disbelief. They were masters from the Magpie Plume Planet province, under the Saint Origin world. They took super lightspeed Dharma artifacts and even used wormholes. It took them 20 years to arrive on Earth. The Saint Origin world was located at the edge of the central galaxy and belonged to the core of the universe. It was a prosperous place with many geniuses and a few sacred-grade soul formation cultivators. However, they had never seen a monster with the power of a half-saint while being a nascent soul cultivator. While the three of them were talking, they didn't know that Jiang Tian had already walked past them with Jiang Beibei. "Dad, I miss Grandpa and Grandma so much," Jiang Beibei said with tears in her eyes. "Little master, don't cry. We'll be back when we become more powerful. Besides, the Black Jade Qilin will come and force me to be responsible for her. I'm so scared." The black-haired dog's words also contained a lot of information. Let's go. Jiang Tian looked back in the direction of the Tianqing school one last time. The next moment, a boat went straight into the Star Ocean. Destination: Saint Origin World in the Central Galaxy. Chapter 1821. In the lonely universe, the sky was filled with stars and a small boat was sailing. The black-haired dog sat at the end of the boat and looked at Earth. Suddenly, he said pitifully, "Master, I'm suddenly so scared. Will there be any terrifying astral beasts?" "Wow, Uncle Blackie, that's Mars, right? That's the ruins of deity, right? It's so vast. Ophiuchus, right? Jiang Beibei, on the other hand, was very excited. She held Jiang Tian's sleeve and pointed at the constellations in the sky, trying to identify them with interest. Yes, Bei is very accurate. A hint of tenderness flashed in Jiang Tian's eyes. The next moment, Jiang Tian took out the heaven-severing sword and gently swung it in the air like a paddle. In silence, the boat traveled through the endless void, passing many planets from Earth to the edge of the solar system in a blink. The journey of the Voyager, which used to be the crystallization of human aerospace technology, took decades to complete, but it only took a second for the boat to travel. Jiang Tian skipped a light year or even a few light years every time he swam. Even the unsetting sun, which had the expertise of artifact forging and technology on Earth, would need dozens of days to travel from the solar system to the Southgate system. However, this time, it only took a few seconds for the boat to travel. Even the cultivators of the Big Dipper, who were the most advanced in space travel in the entire Little Tianan planet region, would be dumbfounded when they saw this speed. When they first traveled to Earth from the Big Dipper, it also took a few years for them to arrive. However, if Jiang Tian traveled from Earth to the Big Dipper, it would only take a few days. This terrifying speed had already surpassed that of a void-returned saint and was comparable to a Tao reunion perfected immortal. In the Southgate system, Jiang Tian stopped for a while and slowly approached the third planet of the Southgate. The array there had indeed been adjusted by the immortal the Arch. Layers of deity arrays locked the deity's body, and the 9-heaven deity seal kept suppressing and destroying it, turning the energy of the deity's body into spirit chi and dharma laws, which were then injected into Earth. "You're a man of your word." Jiang Tian had a faint smile on his face. No one knew what he was thinking. After that, Jiang Tian set off again. The boat carried Jiang Tian and the others like a leaf floating across a clear lake. They flew silently across the universe and arrived at the edge of the Little South Heaven planet region in half a day. That speed was comparable to that of a Tao reunion perfected immortal. However, not even Tao reunion perfected immortals could do it as silently as Jiang Tian, without creating a dimension chaos hole or tearing apart the laws of heaven and earth. On the one hand, it was thanks to the boat. More importantly, Jiang Tian had already attained the 3 flowers at once prominence and was a nascent soul that had perfected the limitless realm. The biggest difference between a nascent soul stage cultivator and a normal nascent soul stage cultivator is that they are like the children of gods that were born and raised by the universe. They are like the young masters of any place in this universe. No matter which star system one arrived in, they would instantly receive the recognition of the heavens and earth and obtain the support of their status. They would be able to naturally use the Dharma laws and Tao of this land, split the star ocean with a finger and cross the world with a step. Not only would they not be affected by the outside world when it comes to using the power of the heavens and earth, they would also receive the help of the heavens and earth. Even void-returning saints and Tao reunion perfected immortals might not be able to compare to them. Jiang Tian felt the subtle feeling of the close connection between the nascent soul and the world as he rode. Right then, his nascent soul was like an engine that burned eternally. The essence chi and dharma laws in the world were like endless energy that poured into the nascent soul. It didn't consume any of the nascent soul's dharma power and could still provide a terrifying amount of power for the boat. Mortals cultivated the outside world, while gods cultivated themselves. So, the nascent soul stage cultivators and soul formation cultivators in the mortal world would naturally receive the recognition of the heavens and earth in their own world. They could do whatever they wanted and were omnipotent. However, once they arrived in other star systems, they would often run into difficulties. Even sacred-grade soul formation cultivators could use their power in other star systems. After all, the Dharma laws were similar to the Grand Tao, but they still needed time. For example, Han Ming had only mastered the Dharma laws and Grand Tao after 2 years at the entrance of Earth. And yet, even sacred-grade nascent soul cultivators and soul formation cultivators would immediately lose the power to control the world once they entered the Fiend realm, the Ghost realm, or the Dimensional Storms, where the Dharma laws and Grand Tao had changed drastically. They could only rely on their own true essence or the Dharma laws they had condensed, which greatly reduced their power. As for normal nascent soul cultivators and soul formation cultivators, they would even be destroyed by the Grand Tao laws when they arrived in such places. That was also the reason why the grand cultivators in the mortal world rarely went deep into the other worlds. After all, he was a grand cultivator who could do whatever he wanted in the mortal world. In the other worlds, even a few nascent soul cultivators of the alien races would be able to make him lose face. Soul formation cultivators, especially. Most of them had their own divine regions, where their dharma power was almost infinite and they were immortal. Even nascent soul cultivators would be useless. Not even a saint who was a level higher would be able to kill a soul formation cultivator in the divine regions easily. And yet, once they left the divine regions and lost the power of dharma laws, the so-called soul formation cultivators would only be powerful nascent soul formation cultivators. Such soul formation cultivators would have a high risk of losing their lives. They might even lose their lives if they were careless and encountered a disaster or a powerful beast. They were almost like gods in their own territories, but they would have to risk their lives in the other worlds and lose most of their power and power. Which cultivator would be willing to take such a risk to explore the other worlds? Why would they feel uncomfortable? In fact, not only the other worlds, Jiang Tian knew about it. In many ancient chaos planets and forbidden lands, there were laws and Taoist rules that forbade the use of the natural energies and laws of the outside world. As a result, most cultivators would lose 90% of their power. There were also many such forbidden areas in the universe. So, the top sacred grounds and celestial sects made their disciples practice body-tempering arts because they were afraid of falling into such a situation. The divine realm is obviously different. Nascent soul cultivators in the divine realm cultivate themselves. They combine their nascent soul, body and soul into one and develop their own world and universe. The dharma power in their bodies will be endless without relying on external objects. So, even if they enter the other worlds or forbidden lands with different dharma laws, they won't lose too much of their power. That way, they can quickly integrate into the worlds with different dharma laws and still maintain their powerful combat abilities. Just like those divine beasts and monster beasts who rely on their own bodies and divine powers. More importantly, the nascent soul cultivators in the divine realm cultivate their inner world and their own universe, which is prepared to become the Hongmeng divine fruit of creation one day. They have different starting points and different horizons. They see different things and pursue different dharma fruits. Jiang Tian was full of emotions. He had only cultivated a sacred grade nascent soul in his previous life, not a divine grade one. He had slowly learned those things after he formed the chaotic 9 orifices divine infant. In addition, he had gone through a lot to reach the immortal state in Hongmeng in his previous life and had a better understanding of the wonders of a divine grade nascent soul. His own dharma laws were applicable everywhere and he would be recognized by the world immediately. Cultivating himself and forming an inner world meant that he would never lose control of the dharma laws and he would always be invincible. Chapter 1822. In fact, even now, Jiang Tian could not figure out the immortal emperor's true attitude, whether he was an enemy or a friend. Moreover, even if he was an enemy, controlling the fate of Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing, he was not the real mastermind behind the scenes. He could only be regarded as a white glove of the supreme magnate. Whether he was forced to do it or did it on his own accord, and what kind of role he played, was still unclear. The real mastermind's strength and status had reached an unimaginable level. There were only a few dozen people who stood proudly at the top of the immortal world or the divine realm. I'm also ridiculous. In front of tigers and wolves, I still consider the cause and effect for them. No matter who the mastermind is, no matter whether the immortal emperor was forced to do it or did it on his own accord, as long as he wants to control my fate, I will still unsheath my sword and cut through all obstacles. Jiang Tian's eyes were cold, and he decided not to think about it. After all, it was not time to unsheath his sword. Before that, the mastermind and the immortal emperor had to carefully cultivate Zhao Xueqing and would not hinder his progress. The most important thing now was to improve his cultivation as soon as possible, until he was qualified to turn against the supreme magnate and unsheath his sword. Over the next few months, Jiang Tian continued on his journey, passing through many large galaxies that were like the Milky Way. He kept on getting closer to the central galaxy. He saw along the way. He passed by huge cultivation stars and saw countless ancestors in old linen clothes with animal skins around their waists, like the ancient Wuxia, working hard on the earth, slashing and burning, planting spiritual fields for the cultivators above them. The seasons changed all year round, and the spiritual seeds that were planted with great difficulty were all cruelly taken away by the cultivators in charge before they could eat a bite. If there was resistance, they would often be beaten into ashes with a spell, just like slaves. He saw that in a poor mortal family, there was a person who was tested to have talent for cultivation and was immediately taken in as a disciple by a cultivator of a higher sect. The entire family celebrated, and a banquet was held for the surrounding villages. They happily moved out of the cold, poor, and dangerous small village that they originally lived in and moved into the city. They were no longer subject to the exorbitant taxes of the sect and the attacks of low-level demon beasts. He saw high-level nascent soul stage cultivators sitting on countless spiritual fields and mineral deposits. Their luxurious residences towered into the clouds, and countless beautiful maids in light gauze clothes shuttled back and forth in the palaces, living a life of debauchery and debauchery. Their magic power was still strong, but their divine souls had begun to fall and decay. Although they claimed to be immortals, were they immortals or devils? He saw that in the aristocratic families, for the sake of fighting for the power of the family, the sons of the first wife and the sons of concubines would cause trouble. They saw their brothers as enemies and killed each other until rivers of blood flowed. In the end, the son of a concubine who obtained the upper hand killed his brother and father. He held the head in one hand and the family seal in the other. He raised his head to the sky and laughed complacently. It was as if what he killed was not his own family but a group of pigs and dogs, a nest of beasts. But there were also tears of blood rolling down his face. Was he despicable? Or did he have his own difficulties and was just trying to survive? What kind of story was behind all of this? He saw, most of the time, Jiang Tian's face was expressionless. He just looked on coldly. He saw a beautiful girl from a poor family being bullied by a low-level cultivator. She was terrified and desperate, and only wanted to die. If his daughter didn't have the heart to let him attack, Jiang Tian would also casually strike down a bolt of lightning and shatter him into pieces. Countless other cultivators were shocked. Then, under the lead of an old Xiantian cultivator, they hurriedly bowed to the sky, begging for mercy, Senior. If Jiang Beibei couldn't bear to see the demon beasts harassing and attacking the city, he would also strike with his palm. His palm could destroy all life and destroy 1,000,000 miles. The golden light shone brightly, as if Buddha had slapped the five-finger mountain. The demon beasts naturally retreated in fear. The people in the city immediately cheered. Only the cultivators were frightened and didn't know what had happened. He passed by two countries fighting. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were surrounding and killing each other. The cultivators on both sides were also fighting with all kinds of Dharma treasures and immortal arts. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. The water in the lake evaporated. Jiang Tian also stopped and watched with interest. It was as if he was watching an exciting movie. He saw how the commanders of the two sides racked their brains to think about each other's moves and then came up with countermeasures. The immortal cultivators were in a killing frenzy. Even the high-level immortal cultivators did not hesitate to rummage through the treasures that they had accumulated over hundreds of years and throw them all into the fray. The mortal kings on both sides sat in their royal palaces in a daze. They could only watch as their countries were smashed into pieces and their people were plunged into misery and suffering. However, they were unable to resist at all. In the end, Jiang Tian couldn't stand it anymore. He slapped the cultivators on both sides into ashes and instantly stopped the war. Just like that, he walked and watched along the way. When he saw injustice, he would also help. Most of the time, he just flew past. The scenes he saw were not only on the planets he passed by, but also on the edge of the entire universe. High-level cultivators were rich. They sat on the wealth and power accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years and had the power to kill. Civilians and low-level cultivators without cultivation could only fight with wild dogs for food and fierce demon beasts for a place to live. The civilizations of human beings were like a dark forest. Every civilization was the prey and the hunter, and it was their responsibility to destroy each other. Outside the central galaxy, the edge of the universe was the wilderness. Human beings fighting in the universe and killing each other crazily had experienced the era of great competition in the wilderness countless years ago. Jiang Tian had even seen it in many other worlds or the edge of the universe in his previous life. He was not surprised at all. On one hand, it was true that the universe was too vast. The edge of the universe and the slightly orderly central galaxy were like a chasm. The tentacles of the central galaxy couldn't reach anywhere. Without a powerful ruler, it was like a group of dragons without a leader. But on the other hand, these immortal cultivators themselves did not want to change. After all, they cultivated diligently, and no one really hoped that they could ascend to the immortal realm. Most of them just wanted to live longer and better lives, and this required a huge amount of cultivation resources. Those cultivators obviously thought that they could live better lives by oppressing the cultivators and mortals at the bottom. But Jiang Tian knew that the prosperity of a civilization required the rise of countless cultivators at the bottom. One day, the power at the bottom would gather into a tinder that would illuminate the dark forest of the universe. By then, swords and plows, iron and blood, and countless generations of people would have to sacrifice their lives and blood. However, only in blood and fire could a new civilization and order rise brilliantly. He was very glad that under his intentional or unintentional arrangements and guidance, Earth had been on the right path from the very beginning. Cultivators fought for mortals. The strong bathed in blood for the weak supported the strong, and the strong could also be born from the weak. A few months later, Jiang Tian arrived at the edge of the storm belt, around the central galaxy. He put away the boat, held his daughter's hand and landed on a planet with life called the Zhoma planet. Looking inside the planet, one could see a black stream of water across the sky, enveloping the entire area, as if it could tear the space apart at any time. What was more terrifying was that the black curtain seemed to be made of space fragments and endless black holes, but it was still flowing slowly as if it were alive. Once inside, it could send a soul formation grand cultivator or even a planet to the depths of the unknown universe at any time. The storm belt was like a moat that surrounded and protected the eternal, dazzling central star river. Standing on the Zhoma planet and looking through the storm belt, Jiang Tian could already see a vast continent floating in the deep universe. The Saint Origin continent was in sight. Chapter 1823. The Tempest Belt was very chaotic. Space fragments were everywhere, and chaotic holes were everywhere. Space collapses and collapses happened from time to time. It was very dangerous. Even soul formation realm cultivators could be crushed into powder if they were not careful. Even their divine souls would be destroyed. Even the soul formation realm cultivators in the central galaxy would not cross it with their physical bodies. Many of them had died before. Fortunately, there were navigators in the star ocean who were proficient in the art of space. They opened up a passage with the experience they had accumulated over the years. This passage connected the Zhoma planet and the central galaxy. One could cross the Tempest Belt by using the Sky Stealer. Although the boat is a fairy artifact and can pass through the passage of the Tempest Belt instantly, the immortal monarch can sense my every move as long as I use this boat, even if he is in the Nine Heavens deity realm. So, I'm afraid I can't use it anymore. I have to find a team to pass through. Jiang Tian touched his chin and pondered. I want to get rid of the immortal monarch's control. Of course, I have to hide as much as possible. The next moment, he put the boat and the absolute heaven sword into the sky-devouring demonic gourd. Then, he used the art of deceiving the heavens and changed his appearance immediately. His figure had grown taller, and he was wearing an ordinary cyan robe. His appearance was even more ordinary, and he seemed to have a bit more vitality. His black hair had turned white, and there were a few more fine wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, making him look even more gloomy. In the end, even his aura was hidden, like a drop of water in the sea. It was difficult to distinguish and sense him. Then he helped Jiang Beibei to change her appearance slightly. She had not started to cultivate yet. The Nine Heavens deity realm recognized people by their aura, so it was easy for her to hide. After doing all this, Jiang Tian raised his head and looked at the sky. His deep gaze seemed to be able to penetrate through the boundless starry river, and he saw a simple and unadorned palace. After thinking about it carefully, there didn't seem to be any problems. He stepped on an ordinary flying sword and rushed towards Jiyuan City. Jiyuan City was one of the largest cities on the Zhuma planet. There were many courier stations. Also, there were a few enemies of Jiang Tian's from his previous life. Jiang Tian wanted to get rid of them. In the Nine Heavens deity realm, purple qi came from the east. Celestial springs were everywhere. Orchids and celestial flowers were swaying. In an ordinary palace, the three words, Undying Hall, were floating above it. The immortal emperor, dressed in an old Taoist robe, was sitting in front of the furnace with his eyes closed. He seemed to be taking a nap or meditating. Beside him, two green-robed Dao children were fanning themselves. Suddenly, the immortal emperor opened his eyes and looked at the mortal world. Venerable emperor, it seems that person's aura has disappeared from the Zhuma star. A boy said curiously. The immortal emperor's eyes shone with a strange light. He pondered and pinched his fingers for a moment. Suddenly, he smiled and said with contempt and arrogance, "It doesn't matter. Let him be." He closed his eyes again and pointed his finger. The pill furnace opened, and brilliant light rushed into the heavens. A silver river fell down, covering a blazing star. The star fell as if it wanted to escape. However, that star was a fireball shaped like the sun and not a planet or a continent. It was terrifyingly hot and was so big that it seemed like it could fill up a light year. The space around it was distorted and collapsed. There seemed to be golden crows flying about inside. The two boys were trembling under the horrible pressure, but the sun couldn't get rid of the light. It became smaller and smaller, closer and closer, and finally fell into the furnace. The immortal emperor pointed his finger again and the lid of the furnace closed. It was quiet inside. This furnace of pills has been refined for 2,207 years, but it hasn't formed a core embryo yet. The two boys took a light breath. As the only fairy connecting the central galaxy and the entire southern fringe galaxies, the Zhuma star was very prosperous, and Jiyuan City was one of the most prosperous cities on this planet. Palaces and palaces were all over the city. Many cultivators flew through the sky on their flying swords. The sky was filled with dazzling lights. There were also crystal spaceships with mottled traces taking off and landing. They were loaded with minerals, materials, and specialties from various galaxies. They wanted to make a fortune through the station. Countless disciples of aristocratic families, elites of sects, and rogue cultivators from the fringe galaxies gathered here, hoping to enter the central galaxy. There were many space pirate gangs, caravans, and businesses all over the planet. There were hundreds of thousands of space coachmen, boatmen, armed escorts, guards, thieves, and robbers who were engaged in legitimate businesses. Even the lowest labor had a cultivation level of the golden core stage. This was a place where good and bad people mixed together. Sun Yen was a person who made a living in the station. He was a peak stage nascent soul stage cultivator with a lifespan of more than 3,000 years. He used to be an ancestor-level figure on a planet in the fringe galaxies. However, because of his lust, he offended another half-divinity transformation stage cultivator, so he had to spend his whole life to make a living here. After working here for more than 200 years, he only controlled a few thousand cultivators, more than 100 flying horses, and several large carriages, which formed a Dragon Gate Caravan Company. In Jiyuan City, he was only a second or third-rate figure. Naturally, he couldn't be compared to the Tao ancestor he was on that planet, tyrannical and tyrannical. When the emperors of the human world saw him, they had to kowtow 3 times and 9 times. And yet, he was still very satisfied and even proud of himself. It was because he had reached the peak stage nascent soul stage from the first level of the nascent soul stage in just 200 years, which was more than 2,000 years of hard work on the home planet. As for the reason, It was because there were too many resources there. Heavenly materials and earthly treasures were everywhere, and there were endless business opportunities. As long as one was willing to work hard, the cultivation resources accumulated in a year would be 100 times more than on the home planet. Besides, there were also many cultivation arts. On his home planet, people would fight to the death for a soul formation cultivation art. Being able to get guidance from a soul formation grand cultivator was like having smoke coming out of their graves. However, soul formation cultivators weren't rare in this place at all. There would be some popping up in bars and businesses from time to time. As long as you were good at reading people's faces, flattering them, and being humble and courteous, when the other party was in a good mood, it was very likely that they would casually give you some advice. Often, the problems that you couldn't solve even after pondering for 100 years on the ancestral planet would be easily solved. His foundation wasn't good enough, so he couldn't live on any planet in the central galaxy for a long time. However, sometimes, because he was transporting cultivators and goods, he could stay in the central galaxy for half a month and absorb precious spirit chi, which greatly improved his power. Early in the morning, Sun Yen had eaten some spirit grain porridge and was humming an unknown song. He stepped on his flying sword and flew to the sky above his Dragon Gate car dealership. Immediately, his subordinates bowed to him respectfully. "Good morning, Lord Sun." "Good morning, Heavenly Lord." Sun Yen felt a bit smug after hearing those greetings. Being addressed as Master meant that he had some status. Planet Juma was a place where all kinds of people lived. It was much more difficult to become an ancestral patriarch there than on the home planet. So, he put on airs and snorted as a greeting. "Heavenly Lord? You're just an itinerant cultivator from the countryside. How dare you pretend to be a big shot on planet Juma? Bah! You're just a bumpkin from a remote place. You kneel when you see a divine lord. How shameless can you be?" A mocking voice came. That person didn't try to hide it at all and was fearless. Hearing this voice, Sun Yen's mood instantly turned bad. His face sank and an urge to kill surged in his chest. Chapter 1824. Sun Yen didn't need to look to know that it came from his nemesis, Chen Xiong, who was also the owner of another large car dealership in Jiyuan City. Because they were competing for business, it was needless to say that they didn't get along well. Chen Xiong was now the outer elder of the Taihao sect in St. Origin World and was a local. Chen Xiong's current cultivation was lower than Sun Yen's. He was merely a nascent soul cultivator. However, Chen Xiong had a backer, and his connections extended far and wide. Thus, Sun Yen didn't dare to offend Chen Xiong in the slightest, even when Chen Xiong bullied him all day long. However, Sun Yen hated Chen Xiong to the core. If someone had told him that he could completely disappear from the world in exchange for all his wealth, Sun Yen might have hesitated for a moment, but if he had changed his mind and only asked for half of his wealth, he would have agreed without hesitation. Sun Yen didn't dare to refute Chen Xiong's mockery in front of everyone, and he felt extremely aggrieved. However, the arrival of a guest resolved his embarrassment in time. The guest's hair was white and his eyes were gloomy. He seemed to be only at the nascent soul realm and looked around as if it was his first time here. He didn't seem to be a big shot. Moreover, he was standing on his spiritual treasure flying sword and holding a little girl who had no cultivation at all. What was even stranger was that he had a big black dog with him. The dog's bloodline also seemed to be very ordinary. This was Jiang Tian's car dealership in disguise. "It's hard to do business. Why don't you have a fat sheep for me to slaughter?" Sun Yen knew that this wasn't a big deal, but to ease the awkwardness, he still flew over and greeted with a cheerful face. "Fellow cultivator, are you going to the Central Galaxy? Do you want to know more about the Dragon Gate car dealership?" "Yes, I'm going to St. Origin World in the Central Galaxy." "What's the price?" Jiang Tian asked with a smile. Of course, he had an impression of Sun Yen. Although this person was very treacherous, he wasn't an evil person. 100 million low-grade crystals. Sun Yen observed Jiang Tian for a while and was sure that he was a cultivator from a peripheral planet. He must have come from an extraordinary background. When he first came here, he seemed to be an early-stage nascent soul realm cultivator. His bone structure and aptitude were nothing special. Such a cultivator would not be able to establish himself in the central galaxy. He must have come here to broaden his horizons so that he could go back to his home planet and show off. Therefore, Sun Yan did not care much about him. However, such cultivators were also the most vain. They liked to puff themselves up at their own cost. They were good spendthrifts. Generally, as long as they were complimented, these local rich people would not only happily pay the carriage fee, but also give a lot of tips. Therefore, it was a very profitable business for the car dealership. However, he was also afraid that this business would be snatched away. Therefore, in order to avoid being noticed, he used his divine sense to inform Jiang Tian and specifically instructed him, "Let's go to the carriage shop and talk. Everything can be discussed." 100 million low-grade crystals? Jiang Tian didn't frown at all and said, "If it's converted into top-grade crystals, it'll only cost 1,000 pieces, right?" Then he patted the sky-devouring demonic gourd, and a bulging bag half the height of a person appeared on the ground. Then he said indifferently, "Is it enough?" This, Sun Yan knew at first glance that the crystals were of extremely high quality. The spiritual qi inside was extremely condensed, and there were even laws lingering around them. He hurriedly said, "It's enough. It's enough." However, he looked at the opposite side worriedly and cautiously reminded him, "My friend, there are all kinds of people here. You must always remember that wealth can move people's hearts. Don't reveal it easily." As he spoke, he was so tired that his face turned red. He panted heavily and put Jiang Tian's crystals into his storage ring with difficulty. Then he handed Jiang Tian a talisman receipt and said, "We'll leave on time tomorrow morning." Jiang Tian took the receipt that was surrounded by magic power and was about to leave. Suddenly, a hearty laugh came from the opposite side. "My friend, is this your first time in Jiyuan City? How should I address you? Where are you from?" "I'm Chen Xiong, the owner of Zongtian car dealership." Amidst these words, a robust man with a full beard, a tall figure, luxurious clothes, and various protective and soul-nourishing magic artifacts that flickered with the light of treasures, stepped through the air and cupped his fists towards Jiang Tian. "My friend Qin, nice to meet you. I'm Xiqing Cultivator, from the Black Sun Star Zone. My roots are just a small sect that is not worth mentioning. It's indeed my first time here. Please take care of me." Jiang Tian cupped his fists slightly, but a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. Chen Xiong, an outer elder of the Haoyan sect, ran a car dealership business. In his previous life, Jiang Tian had suffered countless losses and humiliations because of him. In his previous life, after the immortal monarch brought Jiang Tian to the central galaxy, he directly taught him a set of basic cultivation methods and left him to fend for himself in the Saint Origin world. For hundreds of years, the immortal monarch didn't care about him at all. At that time, Jiang Tian was just a rogue cultivator. In his early years, he lived a precarious life in the Saint Origin world as a coolie, porter, farmer, and alchemy apprentice. At that time, Qin Xiong was an extraordinary person. He had returned to the headquarters of the Haotian sect in the Saint Origin world. He was famous and always took pleasure in humiliating Jiang Tian. After Jiang Tian reached the foundation establishment stage, he wanted to go back to Earth to visit his old friends. However, Qin Xiong seemed to have changed his attitude. He warmly helped Jiang Tian and called him brother. In fact, Jiang Tian later found out that it was all a conspiracy. With the Haotian sect's strength, it was impossible for them to reach Earth. Chen Xiong only wanted to relieve Jiang Tian's vigilance, but secretly contacted several Golden Core Hall Masters and Elders to kill Jiang Tian together with the intention of stealing the treasure. During the battle, Jiang Tian crazily swallowed pills to temporarily increase his cultivation and achieve the ultimate counterattack. However, he also suffered heavy injuries and had to cultivate for another 30 years to return to his peak state. At this time, Chen Xiong should be tempted by the treasure again. However, how could the current Jiang Tian be the inexperienced little lamb that could be slaughtered by others? So its fellow Taoist Xiqing. Chen Xiong's face was full of enthusiasm. He smiled and said, "You're new here, so you don't have a place to stay. The old man is an outer elder of the Haotian sect in the Saint Origin world. Not only do we have a car dealership, but we also have a business and a hotel. Since you've found the Dragon Gate car dealership, I won't compete with Sun Yen for business." With that, he shot a warning glance at Sun Yen. Sun Yen's eyes drooped as a forced smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Chen Xiong seemed to be very satisfied with Sun Yen's submissive attitude. "However, if you're looking for a trading company, I'm not trying to boast. The trading company of our Haotian sect has always been fair and honest. In particular, the tranquil soul-pacifying powder, made by the elder of the alchemy room, is a must-have for crossing the storm star belt. Otherwise, the spiritual interference alone is enough to make you suffer and destroy 1/10 of your cultivation. As for the hotels, the Haotian sect also has a few in Jiyuan City. They're all equipped with spirit-gathering arrays and guarded by several golden core and nascent soul cultivators. No one dares to disturb them." He winked his eyes coquettishly and said patiently, "There are even some beautiful stoves who are adept at dual cultivation. Many of them are from the declining nobles of the central galaxy. They are very beautiful and have excellent bone structures. Not only can I have a good time, but I can also improve my cultivation. Why not?" "Really? I'm tired from the journey. I really need to wash off the dust." Jiang Tian's eyes lit up. He pretended to be very interested and squeezed the hand of Jiang Beibei, who was glaring at him. During the journey, Jiang Tian and the big black dog had taught the little girl some common knowledge about cultivation. She had a rough idea about what a cultivation furnace was. "Fellow Taoist, if you're interested, I'll take you there now." Chen Xiong's eyes flashed with a trace of treachery. He chuckled, grabbed Jiang Tian's wrist, and flew into the sky. Chapter 1825. Siqing, remember to check carefully. Don't miss the time. Sun Yen also reminded him, but then he shook his head and heaved a sigh. Perhaps Jiang Tian's experience was too shallow, and he might not have checked the ticket carefully. Sigh. Let's not talk about the perilous central galaxy. Every year, countless heroes and talents in the peripheral galaxies perish at the entrance of the central galaxy and turn into dry bones. He heaved a sigh helplessly. I've earned 100 million low-grade crystals for nothing. I can sell that spot again. I'm so happy. However, the next second, his regret was replaced by joy. He went back to the garage, closed the door and set up a restriction array. Then he checked the crystals carefully. The scenery before Jiang Tian's eyes changed rapidly. Suddenly, black mist filled the air and filled the surrounding 10 miles of space, making it impossible for him to see the outside world. A moment ago, it was still bustling with noise and excitement, and in the next moment, it was as if he had arrived in another world. "A small grotto heaven," Jiang Tian said with a half-smile. "I'm Xie Yunting, an outer elder of the Haotian sect. Nice to meet you." A beautiful woman with a voluptuous figure dressed in palace attire walked out. She was tall and slender, and her waist was as slender as a snake. Her long and slender legs were faintly discernible under the gauze dress. She was a nascent soul realm cultivator, but she was at the peak of the 9th stage nascent soul realm. This guy doesn't seem to be as old as he looks. His skin is tender and smooth. He must be delicious. His body belongs to me. It's a good time to eat it. In addition, there was also a bald monk. He wore a blood-red monk robe, but he had a pair of demonic vertical pupils. His gaze was cruel and greedy as he looked at Jiang Tian. It was as if Jiang Tian was a piece of fat meat. He would occasionally stick out his tongue and make a 1111 suo sound. The blood monk, Tuju, was an outer elder of the Haotian sect. He was also a peak-stage nascent soul cultivator. In addition, there were more than 10 early-stage nascent soul cultivators, all of whom were looking at Jiang Tian with malicious smiles. Almost all the people who had tried to kill Jiang Tian in his previous life were there. However, they had arrived 100 years earlier. Is fellow cultivator Xie a dual cultivation vessel? Why did he find someone else? I'm too embarrassed to do that in public, Jiang Tian said with a smile that was not a smile. Xie Tingran immediately revealed a mocking smile and looked at Jiang Tian as if she was looking at an idiot. Taoist Siqing, she's not dual cultivating with you. She wants to kill you. Chen Xiong laughed sinisterly and said calmly, "Who told you to bring so many crystals? If you want to blame someone, blame your shallow experience in the martial world for not knowing the dangers of the world." It was obvious that this wasn't the first time he had done such a thing. He didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt or psychological burden. Instead, he was immensely proud of himself. "I can't believe that a bumpkin from a remote place like the Black Sun Domain has so many crystals. It's not something an ant like you can enjoy. Take the initiative to erase the divine sense imprint on the gourd so that we can take it. When we kill you later, we'll give you a quick death." Xie Yunting looked down at Jiang Tian and said coldly, as if killing Jiang Tian without torturing him was already an extrajudicial mercy. "Ha, the Haotian sect is still so overbearing." A mocking smile appeared on Jiang Tian's face. If it were in his previous life, Jiang Tian would only be a foundation establishment cultivator 100 years later, a lowly itinerant cultivator. When he encountered a sect like the Haotian sect, he would tremble in fear and avoid them. However, in this life, Jiang Tian could destroy the Haotian sect by lifting his hand if he wanted to. Even though the Haotian sect was located in the central galaxy, it was only a third-rate sect in the divine origin world after all. It only had one soul formation divine lord, and he was just an ordinary soul formation cultivator. It was like there were weak students in the big cities who were even weaker than the divine soul formation cultivators in the savage lands. "What? You don't want to admit defeat? Then I'll send you to hell." Blood Monk Tuju gave a loud shout and his nascent soul suddenly rumbled. His spirit embryo trembled and demonic aura gushed out. A strange snake apparition rose behind his back and opened its bloody mouth. Its fangs were exposed and surrounded by a sea of blood. Corpses and bones floated up and down. It looked like it was filled with baleful aura and was threatening Jiang Tian. "Big Black, eat them," Jiang Tian suddenly ordered coldly. "I've been eating spirit pills every day. My taste buds are getting bland. Finally, I can taste something new." Big Black's eyes were filled with excitement. Saliva flowed out of his mouth and a human-like smile appeared on his face. He growled, which was actually a dragon's roar. Suddenly, he jumped out and rushed into the crowd. He shook his body and turned into a dog with a dragon's head. The dragon's head expanded out of proportion and was like a small mountain. He bit toward Blood Monk Tuju. "What? He has the bloodline of the dragon race." Tuju was astonished. The strange snake Dharma idol swelled and rushed toward the large black dog. However, it was completely useless. It was directly snapped in half by the large black dog's bite. Immediately afterward, the massive dragon's mouth covered the sky and swallowed Tuju whole. Even his nascent soul, physical body, and divine sense were all chewed into pieces. At this moment, more than a dozen flying swords and a giant axe whistled and slashed toward Big Black's back. Big Black didn't even turn his head. With a swing of his tail, the flying swords and giant axe were all turned into dust. Several cultivators were all swept away and crashed into the mountain wall. Their skin and flesh were lacerated and they died. Although Xie Yunting and Chen Xiong didn't die on the spot, they were also very miserable. They were knocked a few miles away and showed fear. For a moment, they hesitated and were in a dilemma. Xie Yunting's spirit embryo was shaking from the impact. Cracks appeared on her nascent soul, and blood flowed out of the web between her thumb and forefinger. She quickly fled out of the small grotto heaven and said in horror, "Chen Xiong, what's going on? Didn't you say that they came from the Black Sun Star region? This grotto heaven is completely under our control. Why is the law that I struck out broken by this evil dog?" That Big Black suddenly rushed over and slapped down with his claws. A dragon claw with a radius of 1 mile appeared. Its scales were heavy, and its bone hook was sharp. It shone with golden light and was surrounded by purple gas. It was as heavy as a mountain. Xie Yunting's beautiful eyes were wide open. She didn't even have time to beg for mercy before she was smashed into a meat patty. Until the moment of her death, her charming face was still full of shock and fear, as if she couldn't believe that she was killed by a small itinerant cultivator from a remote place. The large black dog opened its mouth and sucked, swallowing her flesh and spiritual power into its stomach. "Senior, please spare my life. I didn't recognize the real dragon. I shouldn't have plotted against you." At this time, Qin Xiong was so scared that he fell to his knees and trembled. He didn't dare to resist at all. Jiang Tian's inconspicuous big black dog was comparable to the strength of an ordinary soul formation cultivator. As for Jiang Tian, he was probably even stronger. Even in the Saint Origin continent, he was a giant at the level of a sect master or family leader. He was just an ordinary nascent soul cultivator. How could he be a match for Jiang Tian? A lifetime of hunting geese, only to be pecked by the geese. This time, I really kicked a steel plate. Qin Xiong wailed in his heart. He had never thought that Jiang Tian, a cultivator from a remote star region, would be so powerful. If he was given another chance, he swore that he would never provoke Jiang Tian. He would stay as far away from him as possible. "Senior, this junior is willing to contribute all of my family's wealth to young master. I am willing to be young master's cow and horse. I have quite a lot of connections in Saint Origin World and Juma Star. I know everything big and small. I am willing to serve young master." Qin Xiong roared with tears and snot running down his face. "You don't know as much as I do." Jiang Tian's face was full of sarcasm. He slapped down without hesitation. Chapter 1826. Boom. Qin Xiong turned into dust and even his divine soul was destroyed. Jiang Beibei watched from the side. Her beautiful eyes didn't show much emotion, showing a calmness that didn't match her age. She seemed to be used to killing and already knew the cruelty of the cultivation world. Alas, those guys from the Haotian sect set up the small grotto heaven array. Normal cultivators, even soul formation cultivators, wouldn't be able to find it if they didn't search carefully. However, you've done too much and I found some clues. In a remote forest outside the city, Sun Nian hid his energy and covered his face with a Dharma artifact. He blended in with the surrounding vegetation and rocks. He secretly looked at a point in the void with burning anticipation in his eyes. He came here to scavenge. Normally, after the Haotian sect finished their business, they would disperse the small grotto heaven array and leave behind some Dharma artifact fragments. Although they were not worth mentioning for the giants, they were still a small fortune for a nascent soul cultivator like him. It was not easy for cultivators from the peripheral galaxies to establish a foothold here. Sun Nian had been thrifty and diligent, expanding his sources of income and reducing his expenditure. That was how he had accumulated his current wealth. After a while, the void trembled and the light changed. So fast this time? It only took less than half an hour. Sun Nian's eyes lit up. Then he frowned and shook his head. Alas, that fellow cultivator Siqing is still too weak. They got it so fast. Idiot, I reminded him again and again to check the tickets, but he didn't. However, he was shocked to see that the one who stepped out of the void was not Qin Xiong and the others from the Haotian sect, but a middle-aged cultivator from a remote galaxy. Blood was flowing under his feet and there were corpses everywhere. Qin Xiong, Xie Yunting and the blood monk were nowhere to be seen. In an instant, Sun Nian was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out. How could he be so powerful that he killed Qin Xiong and the others? Jiang Tian seemed to have sensed Sun Nian's gaze. He looked up and smiled at Sun Nian. Sun Nian immediately looked away as if he had seen a poisonous snake. He wasn't happy about the death of Qin Xiong at all. Instead, he felt sad about the death of his enemy. He was now fully aware that this young man wasn't some fat sheep. He was clearly the king of hell. As for Qin Xiong and the other brats, they had actually thrown themselves into the palms of these kings of hell. They were really seeking their own deaths. Actually, when he saw Jiang Tian, how could he not have the intention to kill and seize the treasure? But he knew that Qin Xiong would surely intercept him, so he simply didn't make a move. Jiang Tian didn't inform Sun Nian. Instead, he directly returned to Jiyuan City and found an inn to settle down. He believed that Sun Nian wouldn't speak carelessly. Carelessly speaking would cause more trouble, which might lead to the Haotian sect's interrogation and revenge. Furthermore, Jiang Tian had removed the outer house elder that the Haotian sect had placed on Juma planet, which would greatly affect the business of his caravans, businesses, and hotels. This coincidentally gave Sun Nian the opportunity to expand his territory. The night passed uneventfully. The next day, Jiang Tian arrived at the Dragon Gate carriage depot at the appointed time. He immediately saw many cultivators waiting to depart. The first group of people were dressed luxuriously. Most of them were disciples of aristocratic families and sect elites from various star areas. They were surrounded by people around them. The star area they were in wasn't far from the central galaxy. There were only 3 to 5 star areas that were separated by the Milky Way. According to their conversation, many of them had soul formation cultivators as their backers. Some even had connections with some forces in the central galaxy. Their families or sects would provide them with a large amount of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Some even sent soul formation cultivators as guards to escort them to enter the central galaxy. For example, Yang Wu was the most conspicuous one. He came from a large cultivation planet in the extragalactic star area that bordered the central galaxy. His sister was married to the hall master of a second-rate sect in the Divine Origin continent. Even though his foundation was ordinary and he was only in the Golden Core realm after cultivating for 100 years, he was still recruited by that sect. The second group of people were the cultivators around Yang Wu. These cultivators came from all kinds of backgrounds. Most of them came from the central galaxy. Although they were located at the edge, they were definitely not as desolate as the Milky Way. Some of them were elites of their sects and had powerful backers. Some had extraordinary backgrounds. The third group of people were like Jiang Tian. They came from the real star areas that were considered barren. Most of their faces were covered in dust, and their appearances were old. There were even injuries on their bodies, and their auras were dried up. After all, they were too far away from the central galaxy. Even though they were nascent soul cultivators, they were still very weak after arriving there. They were timid and didn't dare to talk. They looked at Yang Wu and the others vigilantly. They talked and laughed, not wanting to miss any information. They were in sharp contrast to the arrogant Yang Wu and the others. But as time went by, this group of cultivators also started to talk slowly. They found cultivators from the same or neighboring star areas and talked about their backgrounds, hoping to make some friends. After all, the central galaxy was too dangerous. They didn't know anyone there and they didn't have any background. Everyone wanted to have more friends. At the same time, Jiang Tian was suddenly attracted by 3 men and a woman. The man in the lead was wearing a simple and natural robe. His beard was as dense as steel needles and he looked serious. He walked in the front with his hands behind his back and a long sword on his back. Anyone who knew what was going on would be able to tell that the scabbard was made of the thinnest skin on the back of the silver-bearded golden-eyed flood dragon. Although this kind of dragon was only a nascent soul beast, it was extremely rare and lived in the forbidden area of the universe. Only peak-stage nascent soul cultivators would dare to enter. As for the man and the woman, the man was wearing a white robe. He was tall and straight, like an unsheathed sword. He was already a peak-stage nascent soul cultivator and a sacred-grade nascent soul cultivator. The woman was wearing a red dress. Her waist was as thin as a snake and her long legs were wrapped in a short skirt. Her body was burning like a ball of fire. But her face was delicate and her black hair was like ink. She lowered her head slightly and blinked her big eyes, like a girl next door. The people around Jiang Tian couldn't help but hold their breaths. Even Yang Wu couldn't help but turn around to take a few glances. When Jiang Tian saw the two of them, there was a hint of coldness and mockery in his eyes. It's Yan Beifei and Zhao Feifei. This middle-aged man is Yan Beitong's father, Yan Nanxian. According to the time, Yan Beifei should be an elite disciple of the Tian Luo sect and Yan Nanxian should be the sect leader of the Tian Luo sect. They should be traveling in the central galaxy or completing a sect mission. 200 years later, Yan Nanxian will be the sect leader and Yan Beifei will be the Zongzi. They were old friends, and they had a grudge against each other. He just didn't expect to meet them so soon. Chapter 1827. In his previous life, the immortal monarch had left Jiang Tian in the Saint Origin continent and taught him a set of basic cultivation techniques. Then he went straight into the depths of the central galaxy. Perhaps he had gone to the nine heavens immortal realm and disappeared. Jiang Tian lived alone in the Saint Origin world for a long time. In the Saint Origin world, Jiang Tian's luck was excellent. He was like the chosen one, always able to obtain some fortuitous encounters and treasures. At that time, Jiang Tian still didn't understand what was going on. Now, he naturally knew that it was the immortal monarch and the other big shots behind the scenes who had left Zhao Xueqing to become an immortal. And before Zhao Xueqing committed suicide, she had transferred the immortal monarch's luck to Jiang Tian. Anyway, although Jiang Tian was an itinerant cultivator, he advanced very quickly. 100 years later, he successfully reached the nascent soul stage and became one of the few heavenly lords among itinerant cultivators. During those 100 years, Jiang Tian struggled in the cold and cruel world of cultivation. He felt endless coldness and bone-piercing coldness. Once he became a nascent soul heavenly lord, everything changed. He was chosen by the Tian Luo sect and became an elite disciple. The person who welcomed Jiang Tian into the sect was Xianxia, who was already an elder of the Tian Luo sect. The Tian Luo sect was one of the top 10 divine sects in the Saint Origin world. It had a long history of hundreds of thousands of years. No matter if it was cultivation techniques or cultivation resources, they were all innumerable. The fact that Jiang Tian could become an elite disciple was no different from a carp leaping through the dragon gate. More importantly, there were dozens of elders in the Tian Luo sect who were at the soul formation realm and an ancestral patriarch who was at the void return realm. The sect was full of powerful cultivators and disciples. Jiang Tian, who was alone, had found a powerful backer. Of course, he was very grateful to Xianxia. Zhao Feifei was also an elite disciple and she seemed to have a good impression of Jiang Tian. However, Jiang Tian only wanted to improve his cultivation at that time. Naturally, he didn't care about her and politely rejected her. Xianxia's son, Yan Beifei, was already a hall master of the Tian Luo sect and was half a step away from the soul formation realm. Moreover, he was deeply in love with his childhood sweetheart, Zhao Feifei. Naturally, he hated Jiang Tian to the bone and repeatedly bullied and targeted him. At that time, Jiang Tian's cultivation was inferior to his. Furthermore, he was grateful to Yan Beifei for recognizing his worth. He could only endure it. After Xianxia found out about the conflict between the two, he tried to uphold justice by severely punishing his son, Yan Beifei. He also took extra care of Jiang Tian and gave him many cultivation resources and techniques. He even wanted to preside over the marriage between Jiang Tian and Zhao Feifei. Although Jiang Tian had rejected the marriage, it still made Jiang Tian very grateful. He saw Xianxia as his second parent and trusted him very much. But 5 years later, Jiang Tian found out that it was all a conspiracy. At that time, Jiang Tian was very cautious and had no confidence in human nature. It turned out that when he was in seclusion to break through, he was always looking for some desolate and unknown forbidden places. But when he was about to break through, he did not reject the protection of Xianxia and the other two. But when he was at the most critical moment of his breakthrough, Xianxia and the other two brazenly attacked. They wanted to destroy his soul and seize the opportunity to possess him. It turned out that Xianxia's physical body was once injured and his lifespan was almost exhausted. He only treated Jiang Tian as a room. Previously, he had given many benefits just to push Jiang Tian's cultivation up as soon as possible so that he could possess him as soon as possible. His grace to Jiang Tian was just to dispel his wariness. Because of Jiang Tian's luck and his reckless fighting, he was able to luckily escape. However, it was still a narrow escape, and he walked on the edge of life and death. Although Jiang Tian escaped, Xianxia was still very angry. He killed Jiang Tian's family and friends. At that time, Jiang Tian had a best friend in Yellow Maple City called Lin Yang. Lin Yang was the son of the city lord. The Lin family was also an aristocratic family that had produced a soul formation expert. Lin Yang's status could be said to be noble and high. But he did not look down on Jiang Tian at all just because Jiang Tian was a cultivator from a peripheral star region. When Jiang Tian was still a small foundation establishment cultivator, He took in the injured Jiang Tian. The two of them exchanged cultivation experiences together, or went outside the city to hunt demon beasts to obtain cultivation resources. He even joked that he wanted to marry his sister to Jiang Tian and become Jiang Tian's brother-in-law. But because Yan Nanxian wanted to vent his anger, he led the army of the sect and directly destroyed Yellow Maple City. Hundreds of people in the Lin family were brazenly exterminated just because Lin Yang was Jiang Tian's friend. Even the thousands of commoners in Yellow Maple City had been slaughtered. During the war, the severely injured Lin Takong was extremely sad and angry. He questioned Yan Nanxian about the Lin family's crime. Why did the Tian Luo sect destroy the city? Yan Nanxian only had one sentence: "You took in Kong Teichu." Then he slapped Lin Takong to death. After Jiang Tian received the news that the Lin family had been exterminated, he did not dare to take revenge at all. He lived in fear for several years until he found an opportunity to escape to the continent of the Nine Clouds. Only then did he feel relieved. That period of time was a nightmare for Jiang Tian. He was tortured by self-doubt and guilt. He woke up from nightmares countless times. His eyes were wide open and he could not sleep or meditate. When he closed his eyes, it was as if he could see the Lin family's ancestor, Lin Yang, and the others questioning Jiang Tian why he did not avenge them. 100 years later, the immortal emperor remembered Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian entered the Hengyu celestial sect. After reaching the soul formation stage, he destroyed the Tian Luo sect and killed Yan Nanxian and the others. But now, Yan Nanxian was only a half-step soul formation stage cultivator. Jiang Tian could kill him with a finger. However, Jiang Tian still did not take action. He went to the continent of Saint Origin to wait for the birth of a celestial material that could help him reach the soul formation stage. Yan Nanxian was different from Chen Xiong. The sect leader of the Tian Luo sect was much more powerful than Chen Xiong's Grand Sky sect. His status was also much higher. Once he was killed, the Tian Luo sect would do everything they could to track down Jiang Tian. Even the Saint Realm Great Ancestor would take action. Before that, Jiang Tian did not want to alert the enemy and complicate matters. After he got the celestial material, destroying the Tian Luo sect was just a matter of minutes. Senior Yan. Leader Yan. Seeing Yan Nanxian and the other two enter, the crowd was in an uproar. Many people, including Yang Wu and the others, saluted and flattered. Jiang Tian also saluted. Meanwhile, Sun Yan also ran out and nodded at Jiang Tian with an indiscernible degree. Then he bowed deeply to Yan Nanxian and said, "Sun Yan greets Yan Nanxian." Yan Nanxian smiled faintly, making people feel as if they were bathed in the spring breeze. He did not have any arrogance as he smiled and said, "Boss Sun, is everyone here? Can we leave now?" Of course. When Leader Yan arrives, it will be the auspicious time to leave. With Senior Yan Nanxian holding the fort, this journey will definitely be smooth sailing. Sun Yan had a fawning expression on his face. His words were so sweet that they seemed to be smeared with honey. "Ha, oh Boss Sun, you have such a sweet mouth. No wonder you are so popular in Jiyuan City." Yan Nanxian smiled and patted Sun Yan's shoulder. "I can only make a living because of the kindness of all the seniors who took care of me." Sun Yan smiled and whistled. Suddenly, a carriage that was about 100 meters long came across the sky like a long snake. There were countless talisman inscriptions on the carriage. They emitted a bright light and dermic powers flowed. Pegasi with 10-meter-long wings and white manes fluttered in the air. They looked up to the sky and neighed. They looked incomparably majestic and were pulling the carriage with the reins of the laws. This kind of Pegasi was extremely rare. They naturally controlled the laws of space and had the bloodline of a divine beast. One of them was priceless. At this moment, cultivators on swords flew over and surrounded the entire carriage. Their robes were embroidered with the words, "Grand Sky Sect." Suddenly, the surrounding people exclaimed with fear in their eyes. The leader of the half-step soul formation cultivators looked down and shouted, "Who is the itinerant cultivator? Siqing? Stand out." Sun Yan's heart skipped a beat. Was the matter exposed? Chapter 1828. Sun Yen lowered his head and didn't dare to say a word. Not only him, but the other cultivators on the bus were also panicking. This half-step divine transformation realm cultivator was no small matter. He was the vice sect master of the heavenly sect, Lei Qianjun. In the Saint Origin world, he was also an overlord. His status was high and lofty, and he looked down on the common people. The other cultivators on the sword were all nascent soul cultivators, elders or hall leaders. Normal cultivators wouldn't dare to offend them. Jiang Tian took a step forward and said with a faint smile, "I am." "Yesterday, our outer sect elder Chen Xiong took you to our hotel, but he suddenly disappeared and his soul tablet was destroyed. Where did he go? Please enlighten me." Lei Qianjun stared at Jiang Tian with murderous intent. Clang, clang. The other cultivators of the Haotian sect were also filled with murderous intent. They all took out their Dharma treasures. Suddenly, the Dharma treasures flashed and a vast amount of Dharma powers came crashing down. Many cultivators retreated in fear. "What? Elder Chen Xiong is dead?" everyone exclaimed. Sun Yen wiped his tears in an even more exaggerated manner and said, "Fellow Taoist Chen Xiong has always been kind and benevolent. Which villainous person dares to attack him?" "Senior," Jiang Tian said calmly, "Elder Chen Xiong did want to take me to the hotel, but he suddenly used an escape art to leave the city. I don't know what happened. But outside the city, I met Li Ludao, who claimed to be the son of the city lord. Senior Chen Xiong said that he had something to discuss with him, so he asked me to find a hotel and leave with Li Ludao. I'm not familiar with this place and I don't know where the hotel is, so I had to find a hotel to stay in. Blue Wave City and Yellow Maple City are neighbors. Between the two is a Xianji forest, which is rich in natural resources. Spirit grasses and orchids are everywhere. The Lin family and Li Liudao's family often fight for this territory because Jiang Tian used to be the Lin family's guard. In his previous life, Li Ludao also often bullied Jiang Tian. Li Ludao was naturally the best scapegoat. According to the time, Li Ludao should have just reached the Golden Core realm. I'm sorry, but you can't take the blame. You can only be killed by Lei Qianjun. Lei Qianjun remained silent as he carefully scrutinized Jiang Tian for a long time. Suddenly, he said coldly, "Give me your storage magic artifact and let me inspect it. In addition, open your divine soul for me to search." At this moment, Yan Nancian suddenly sneered and said, "Lei Qianjun, don't be noisy here. Can't you see that the bus is about to depart?" "Hallmaster Yan, I'm really sorry for disturbing you." Lei Qianjun bowed deeply with a humble expression. But yesterday, Chen Xiong was not the only one. Even the Blood Monk and Xie Yunting, two elites of the sect, died together. Moreover, their souls were extinguished in less than a breath. To our humble sect, this is a huge loss and a great humiliation. Fellow Taoist Si Qing was one of the last people Chen Xiong saw. She was naturally extremely suspicious. How could this junior not investigate clearly? It can't be. This guy is so powerful and ruthless? Hearing this, everyone looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. Then, they quickly retreated dozens of meters away, drawing a clear line between them and Jiang Tian, afraid that they would be implicated. Even though Zhao Feifei didn't step back, she also looked at Jiang Tian with her eyes wide open. Chen Xiong, Blood Monk Tuju, and Xie Yunting were all nascent soul heavenly lords who had been through hundreds of battles. Their nascent souls were all at the peak of their nascent souls. How could this brat be so capable that he could kill them instantly? Yan Nancian looked surprised. He examined Jiang Tian for a while and suddenly smiled. Siqing should be a nascent soul cultivator. If he can kill 3 high-grade nascent soul cultivators, he can only be a sacred-grade nascent soul cultivator. But look at his energy. How can he be a sacred-grade nascent soul cultivator? Reporting to Senior Lei, this junior would be so bold as to say something fair. This is the first time Siqing came to planet Juma from the Black Sun Galaxy. She doesn't know anything about this place. How could she know about the Azure Wave City of the Divine Origin world and Li Ludao? Sun Yen also smiled and bowed. Lei Qianjun exchanged a few glances with the few elders and hall masters around him, communicating with each other through their divine senses. Suddenly, he bowed deeply and said, "Hall Master Yen, I apologize for my rudeness. We will leave now. Have a safe trip, senior. Sorry for bothering you today. We'll visit you another day to apologize." Yen Nanxian waved his hand, indicating that it was okay. Then, Lei Qianjun left with many cultivators. Fierce discussions came from afar. "So Li Ludao is the most suspicious." "No. Li Ludao can't do that, but the ancestral patriarch of the Li family is a half-step soul formation cultivator. Only he could kill so many cultivators in an instant. Damn it. How dare they bully the heavenly sect? Kill them all." Sun Yen calmed down and said with a smile, "It's just a false alarm. Let's get on the train." "Xiqing, you're from the Black Sun Galaxy too?" "So am I. I'm Guochuan Dong." In the process of going through the security check, a fatty beside Jiang Tian suddenly pulled on his sleeve and said in a low voice, "Nice to meet you, Cultivator Gua. I didn't expect to meet you here." Jiang Tian grabbed the fatty's meaty hand and had a teary expression on his face, as if he was a fellow townsman. "Xiqing, do you have any other titles? How come I've never seen or heard of you?" Guochuan Dong scratched his head and said with a confused smile. The Black Sun Galaxy was also a desolate place. There were only a few nascent soul cultivators in the past few hundred years. Guochuan Dong knew almost all of them. As soon as Guochuan Dong said that, Jiang Tian immediately felt a faint immortal will covering him. Could it be that Yen Nanxian is already preparing to search for a residence? Jiang Tian didn't take it to heart at all. Although he didn't want to alert the enemy, if Yen Nanxian made a move now, he naturally wouldn't mind killing him with a slap. Thus, he smiled faintly and said, "The martial world is dangerous. Who doesn't change their identities frequently? How can they show others so easily?" "Identity? What's that?" Guochuan Dong was puzzled. They went through the security check together. There were at least 2 half-heavenly lords at the inspection station in front of the carriage. There was also a mirror hanging in the air. As long as someone stood under it, the mirror would immediately reflect the person's true appearance, cultivation, race, bloodline, and other information. There was a guard at every step. Normally, nascent soul cultivators would show their true appearance at the first checkpoint. And it was said that the checkpoints in the divine origin world were even stricter. Jiang Tian was the opposite. He had become a nascent soul cultivator in the divine realm, and his energy was restrained to the extreme. He looked like an ordinary person, so he had to release his energy. The mirror almost didn't reflect Jiang Tian's golden core level. It could only tell that he was a human, but it didn't know anything else. Yen Nanxian, who had already boarded the carriage, turned around in confusion, wondering if the mirror was broken. In the end, about 100 people entered the carriage together. Chapter 1829. The carriage was long and narrow, about 100 meters long and 20 meters wide. For example, Jiang Tian and Guochuan Dong had only spent 100 million crystal stones to buy a middle-class seat. Each of them had a small room that could only fit 3 or 4 people. The lower-class seats were even more cramped. There were no private rooms, so they could only sit cross-legged there. Other than that, there were also a few first-class seats with spirit-gathering arrays and soundproof seals. Yen Nanxian and the other 2 were sitting in such seats. Guochuan Dong's room was very close to Jiang Tian's room. Since Guochuan Dong was very familiar with Jiang Tian, he didn't want to leave after entering Jiang Tian's room. With a face full of expectation, Guochuan Dong said, "We will arrive in Saint Origin World in 10 days. I heard that the spirit qi there is 100 times more abundant than in our ancestral planet. I think we can reach the soul formation realm from the nascent soul realm in 200 years. Jiang Tian shook his head and smiled bitterly. "You are too naive. My aptitude is average, but 500 years should be enough, right?" Guochuan Dong was so excited that the fat on his body shook. "Do you know that the spirit qi in the central galaxy is very uneven?" Jiang Tian wasn't in a hurry. He said with a faint smile. "Uneven? What do you mean?" Guochuan Dong pinched Jiang Beibei's soft cheeks, which made Jiang Beibei roll her eyes. She smiled and said, Sister Xiqing, is this your daughter? She is so cute. Your partner must be very beautiful. Why don't I see her? We are separated for a while, but we will meet again someday. Jiang Tian didn't linger on this topic. He smiled and explained, first of all, in the Saint Origin world, the top 10 great sects led by the Luo Ying sect and the Tian Luo sect are aloof from worldly affairs. They occupy famous mountains, great rivers, and blessed lands. They occupy large spiritual veins. They occupy 50% of the world's spiritual energy. Secondly, there are cultivation cities controlled by the cultivation royal families and the noble families. These cultivation cities are often built with large spirit gathering arrays as the foundation. They absorb all the spirit qi in a few thousand miles, or even tens of thousands of miles, like rivers flowing into the sea. This is where the spirit qi is abundant. In this city, there are also aristocratic families' mansions, cultivation rooms, and so on. The spiritual qi is even denser. In this way, apart from the sects and aristocratic families, even if the spiritual qi in other places is naturally abundant, it will become extremely thin due to this siphoning effect. It's not an exaggeration to say that the spiritual qi in the ordinary realms of the Saint Origin world might not even be as good as in our hometown. When Guochuandong heard this, he immediately became muddle-headed. He had heard from his ancestors and read from ancient books that Saint Origin world or Central Galaxy was the holy land of cultivation in the entire universe. Once one entered it, a breakthrough would be as easy as water flowing through a canal. He didn't expect it to be so complicated. Then what should we do? Guochuandong frowned and said, I heard that those sects are very strict when it comes to selecting disciples. Nascent soul cultivators from remote star areas are nothing to them. Right, there are also the cities built by the imperial family and the aristocratic family. Can't we just enter the city directly? How can it be that easy? Jiang Tian smiled leisurely. As far as I know, all cultivation cities are strictly managed by cultivators. Either you spend a lot of money to buy a cultivation building or a palace to get a residence permit, or you rent a place with crystals and have the support of those companies and families to get a temporary residence permit. Otherwise, you won't be allowed to enter. It's very dangerous to live in a mortal city or wander in the wild. First of all, there are monsters everywhere. The chances of nascent soul cultivators dying are very high. Second, as far as I know, the boundary between the Central Galaxy and the Fiend Realm has been unstable in the past 100 years. Occasionally, there will be demonic waves, which are even more terrifying. Damn, is it that difficult? That's not what my ancestral patriarch said. Guochuandong screamed and couldn't wait to turn around and run away. However, he found that the sky steed's wings covered the sky and went straight into the deep space. The planet on the sky steed was rapidly shrinking. They had already entered the passage of the storm belt. I want to go back to the ancestral planet. Isn't it good to be called the ancestral patriarch and be worshipped by thousands of people there? Why do I have to go to the Saint Origin world to suffer? Guochuandong beat his chest and stamped his feet. It was impossible for him to go back now. Sun Yan would never go through all the trouble for him. I've worked so hard to reach the nascent soul level and I can finally dominate the ancestral planet. However, my ancestral patriarch told me that there are soul formation grand cultivators, void returning saints and Tao reunion perfected immortals up there. It's not easy to cultivate. After a few hundred years of hard work, I thought I could finally enjoy life in the divine origin world. I didn't expect it to be so difficult. Guochuandong sat on a chair with a dull look in his eyes. He was very depressed and kept sighing. Looking at the dejected Guochuandong, Jiang Tian somehow found it funny. It was like studying hard in high school. The teachers always told you that as long as you got into college, your life would be smooth and everything would go smoothly. It was like the college entrance examination would solve all the problems in life. However, after entering college and society, you would realize that the college entrance examination was child's play compared to the beatings of society. Competition in the workplace, starting a business, buying a house, getting married, having a relationship, having a child, having parents growing old, having a midlife crisis? All the way to difficult mode, he had to continuously kill monsters and level up, and the college entrance exam was just a small hurdle, an insignificant monster. Life is always a struggle in the sea of bitterness. Since you've come to a wider world, there's no turning back. You should fight for a future and fight for your life. There's no reason to be afraid and retreat. There are risks and opportunities here, but there are more opportunities after all. My friend Gua, you should face them positively. Jiang Tian smiled encouragingly, as if encouraging himself as well. Coward! The large black dog sneered, forgetting how cowardly it usually was. Exactly! Jiang Beibei also rolled her eyes at him with disdain. You're right. Guochuandong slapped his thigh and his dim eyes lit up. There seemed to be a fire of fighting spirit in them. Actually, my aptitude is ordinary, and I don't have any background. I'm just a mortal. Back then, the ancestral patriarchs, the leaders, and even my parents didn't think much of me. They didn't give me many cultivation resources, and the cultivation arts I practiced were mediocre. But with my diligence and courage, I ventured deep into the forbidden lands and risked my life again and again. Finally, I obtained some training resources, and my cultivation soared day by day. Eventually, I became the only person on the homeworld who entered the nascent soul stage within 1,000 years. No matter how difficult it is in the divine origin world, it's still much better than my ancestral planet where spirit chi is scarce. If you show the courage and perseverance that you used to have, you'll eventually be able to carve out a bloody path. It's good that you've thought it through. Jiang Tian revealed a gratified expression and nodded. Guochuandong patted his storage ring and took out a plate of chicken drumsticks. He smiled and said, Golden Core Stage Demonic Beast, cooked by the 5 colors peacock. Come, let's eat together. As he said that, he passed one to Jiang Beibei. Jiang Beibei beamed with joy. The large black dog was also drooling, and he happily started to eat. At this moment, a series of knocks came from the door. Jiang Tianxin waved his hand, and the door opened. Yang Wu walked in slowly, surrounded by a few cultivators in luxurious clothes. With his hands behind his back, he said arrogantly, I'll give you 100 million crystal stones, and you'll give up the private room. Also, don't eat. The stench is so overwhelming that even my Dao companion is disgusted. They bought the tickets late. There were no more mid-class seats, so they had to buy the low-class seats. However, the low-class seats were not only narrow, but also had no barriers or soundproofing. It was not safe. Yang Wu had just hooked up with a female cultivator from a remote galaxy and wanted to cultivate with her. Therefore, he had set his eyes on Jiang Tian and Guochuandong's room. I'm sorry. I don't lack money. I won't trade with you. Jiang Tian smiled and said, Chapter 1830. That's right. How many years have you been abstaining from food? Don't you know that ordinary food is not allowed in the carriage? Beside Yang Wu, a charming woman in a red dress fanned the flames and shouted, If you don't change seats, I will report to Sun Yan and Yan Nanxian. Let's see if anyone can maintain order and throw you out of the empty carriage. Seeing this, Guochuandong quickly put away the peacock leg, cupped his hands and smiled humbly. I'm sorry. I was hungry and couldn't help but eat a few mouthfuls. I don't want to eat any more. Why don't I give you mine? I only need an extra 10 million low-grade crystal stones. This guy wanted to take the opportunity to make a fortune. There was indeed a rule that prohibited eating on the carriage, but it was not limited to the private rooms. But Guochuandong intended to keep the peace and did not argue about this. Let's sit in the same room. It will be more lively. Jiang Tian also stood up with a smile. As the saying goes, don't slap a smiling face. But Yang Wu did not intend to keep the peace. He came from a planet close to the central galaxy, and his brother-in-law was also a prestigious existence in the Saint Origin continent. He had not learned how to hide his strength and bide his time. He had heard many stories about the elites of the sects in the Saint Origin continent. Now, he had already regarded himself as a member of a second-rate sect in the Saint Origin continent. The people he met were all ants from remote planets. Why should he hold back when he was in the right? So Yang Wu smiled coldly and said, "Oh, that dog seemed to have spoken. It's not an ordinary beast, but a demonic beast. Fellow Taoist Siqing, you are amazing. You brought a demonic beast on the carriage. You must be backed by a spirit-severing realm cultivator. You must be kidding. We will leave now. Just give us the original price." Guchuandong was scared and did not dare to raise the price. Yang Wu was different from him. He already had a foothold in the Saint Origin continent. It was said that his brother-in-law was already a spirit-severing realm cultivator. Guchuandong could not afford to offend him. Unexpectedly, Yang Wu said arrogantly, "I changed my mind. I will give you both the private rooms. I will not give you any crystals. Otherwise, if you bring a filthy demonic beast into the carriage, it will be a great taboo. I'm afraid you will be thrown out immediately." A small fry from a remote village dares to cause trouble here. In fact, the big black dog had indeed gone through a safety check. This was because only bloodthirsty and violent primitive demonic beasts were allowed to pass through the security check. If the demonic beasts had been tamed, they would not be included. However, Yang Wu believed that as long as he reported it, Sun Yen would definitely give him face. However, after hearing those words, Jiang Tian, who had already stood up, suddenly sat back down. He sat cross-legged in meditation, calm and composed. "Close the door and let the dog out." Just as Yang Wu was puzzled, Jiang Tian suddenly spat out a few words. How can we do that?" Guchuandong was shocked. They came from a remote and desolate place, and they were like duckweeds in the water. How could they afford to offend an existence like Yang Wu? Although Yang Wu was only a golden core cultivator, his companions were the elites of their planet. All of them had reached the peak of the nascent soul stage, and they were all at the peak of the nascent soul stage. Besides, even if Jiang Tian was lucky enough to win, when he arrived at the Saint Origin continent, wouldn't he win the bloody and cruel revenge of the other side? Bullshit. As if he had been greatly insulted, he burst out in disgust. His dantian rumbled and his golden core trembled. A vast amount of true essence surged toward Jiang Tian to suppress him. "Don't bleed. I have to clean it with talismans later," Jiang Tian said softly. Just as everyone was trying to figure out what was going on, the large black dog suddenly transformed into a 3-meter-long true dragon. It shook its head and swung its tail, sending Yang Wu flying with a swipe of its tail. Yang Wu clutched his chest as he tumbled to the ground, screaming miserably. Then, the purple golden true dragon opened its bloody mouth and sucked fiercely, swallowing all of Yang Wu's companions in an instant. Its saw-like teeth chewed crazily and swallowed them in the blink of an eye. Yang Wu's temporary companion was already trembling in fear, paralyzed on the ground and scared out of his wits. Guchuandong's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. My heavens, this unassuming large black dog is actually so terrifying. It even swallowed nascent soul stage cultivators in the blink of an eye. At this moment, he believed that Chen Xiong, Blood Monk Tuju, and the other elders of the Haotian sect were killed by Jiang Tian. After a while, the purple golden true dragon turned back into a big black dog. It stood up like a human and slapped Yang Wu's face. With its hands on its waist, it shouted, "Yang Wu, am I a small fish from a remote place? Am I a dirty demonic beast? You're looking down on me. How do you know my strength?" Yang Wu was trembling in fear. He didn't dare to refute. Instead, he apologized, "I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I was wrong. Senior, please spare my life." "Get lost." Jiang Tian waved his hand. Yang Wu and his companion hurriedly retreated, not daring to say a word. Guchuandong was stunned for a long time before he said, "What if Yang Wu takes revenge in the future?" "Revenge? He's far from it." Jiang Tian sneered and didn't say anything else. Yang Wu turned around and went to Sun Yen's room. He told Sun Yen the story with some exaggeration. Sun Yen frowned and said, "This guy's cultivation is so powerful? This kid might have some strength, but how could he be a match for Senior Sun? Moreover, Senior Yen Nancian is still suppressing him here. Yang Wu was unwilling to give up. He added fuel to the fire and urged Sun Yen to make a move to uphold justice. I'll let you know, brother Yang Wu. Forcibly changing seats is indeed against the rules of the carriage. Once there's bloodshed, you'll have to bear the consequences. I can't help you even if I want to. Sun Yen had a helpless look on his face. He sighed and said, Brother, you might as well listen to me. It's better to avoid unnecessary trouble. He only killed your companion, not your parents. Why take it to heart? Let me tell you something. In the Saint Origin world and the Central Galaxy, background, roots, sex, and aristocratic families are nothing but illusions. Only strength is real. You'd better not offend the strong, or you'll end up miserable. Mr. Sun, I'll never come to your carriage again with your attitude. Yang Wu was so angry that his face turned red. He left in a huff. He had no choice but to come up with another plan. He went to Yan Nanxian and told him about it. Yan Nanxian was shocked. He said in disbelief, This guy's foundation is extraordinary. Yan Beifei and Zhao Feifei couldn't calm down either. The beast Jiang Tian took in was a nascent soul cultivator. It was so powerful that it could kill a 9th-grade nascent soul cultivator as easily as cutting vegetables. It probably had the bloodline of a divine beast and was as powerful as a soul formation cultivator. And yet, Jiang Tian was able to take him in. He was definitely powerful. Yan Nanxian's eyes flickered with a bright light, and his expression was indeterminate. He seemed to be deep in thought and planning. Suddenly, he waved his hand and said emotionally, Feifei, ask him to come here. Their attitude must be respectful and courteous. See if he's willing to join the Heavenly Luo sect. Tell him that if he agrees, I'll take him in as my last disciple and teach him everything I know. You'll take him in as your own disciple? Imparting all your ultimate techniques to me? At the side, Yang Wu was dumbfounded. Beside him, his female companion's beautiful eyes were also wide open. A cultivator from a remote galaxy hadn't even done anything. His pet had already attracted the attention of a soul formation cultivator? She couldn't help but think that it would be great if she could be favored by Wanderer Xiqing. Yang Wu, who was as stupid as a cow, was definitely not comparable to her. Yang Wu was so scared that his soul was about to leave his body. He trembled and his face turned pale. He swallowed and knelt on the ground, saying with a trembling voice, Senior Yan Nanxian, just pretend that I've never been here and never said anything like that, okay? Don't let Senior Xiqing know about this. Chapter 1831. All right, you may go. Yan Nanxian nodded. Meanwhile, Zhao Feifei had already arrived at Jiang Tian's room. She said softly, Xiqing, I'm an elite disciple of the Tian Luo sect, Zhao Feifei. I'm a disciple of Senior Yan Nanxian. Greetings, Xiqing. Please have a seat. Jiang Tian's expression was calm. His tone was calm. Thank you, Xiqing. Zhao Feifei curtsied and sat down. She was born in a wealthy family and was a disciple of the Tian Luo sect. Her every move and smile was graceful and elegant. She was as beautiful as a peerless pearl. She smiled and expressed her intention. This must be your first time in the Saint Origin world or the entire Central Galaxy, right? Indeed. Jiang Tian nodded. You may not know this, but the Saint Origin world respects the strong and the weak are ants. Thousands of sects coexist, thousands of races exist, heroes rise together, and saints compete for hegemony. It's very chaotic, and the conflicts between cultivators are extremely bloody and cruel. Zhao Feifei's facial features were exquisite. Her skin was fair like a jade carving. Her face was delicate and beautiful, as if she was otherworldly. As the saying goes, the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Especially for a young talent like you will definitely attract the attention of many experts who want to kill you. You have to be careful. Zhao Feifei was charming, pure, and lustful. She was also very eloquent and very good at bewitching people. She could make people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. Naturally, they would let down their guard and even fall in love with her. In his previous life, when Jiang Tian met Zhao Feifei, He even suspected that she might have practiced the Tao of joy and the art of seduction. Indeed. This is my first time here, so I should be careful, Jiang Tian said calmly. This is only treating the symptoms, not the root. Zhao Feifei smiled bitterly. The real solution is to find a strong backer and stick together. Who will dare to provoke you in the future? Fellow Taoist, you mean, Jiang Tian mocked in his heart. Was Yan Nanxian so impatient? Zhao Feifei smiled and said, the Heavenly Luo sect is one of the top 10 divine sects, second only to the 5 great sacred grounds. In the vast Saint Origin world, it is ranked 6th. There was a divine transformation realm cultivator at the peak of the divine transformation realm. If fellow Taoist wishes to join, I am willing to introduce you to my master, Yan Nanxian. In the future, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing for us to climb the boundless path of immortality together? At the end of her speech, her eyelids drooped and her delicate head turned slightly to the side. She was bashful and timid, like a delicate flower reflecting water, causing one's imagination to run wild. No man would be able to resist this kind of temptation. Thank you for your kindness, fellow Taoist Zhao. However, I'm truly sorry. I've always been an itinerant cultivator. I really can't stand the restrictions of the sect. Jiang Tian cupped his hands and politely declined. Zhao Feifei was quite surprised and looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. She never thought that Jiang Tian would reject her invitation. After all, the Tian Luo sect was indeed a sacred cultivation ground on the Divine Origin continent. Even on the Divine Origin continent, countless young talents wanted to join the sect and become its disciple. Not to mention a cultivator from a remote galaxy like Jiang Tian. Moreover, she had even given him some ambiguous hints. This is the Tian Luo sect. How can you refuse? Guochuandong's eyes were red with jealousy and he was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. He wanted to pry open Jiang Tian's head and see what it was made of. However, seeing that Jiang Tian's expression didn't change, he didn't dare to say more. Zhao Feifei said earnestly again, fellow Taoist Siqing, I wonder if you've heard what I said just now. The Black Sun galaxy seems vast, but compared to the Central Galaxy, it's like a swamp in the ocean. You're the same as the Black Sun galaxy, a remote galaxy, so you're naturally very conspicuous. However, in the Central Galaxy, you're as insignificant as a speck of dust. Not to mention anything else, just the Haoyan sect, which you offended, and the sect behind Yang Wu, you might not be able to handle it. Fellow Taoist Zhao, don't waste your breath. I've made up my mind. Jiang Tian refused again. He only had a few things to do in the Divine Origin continent. First, he had to find Wang Lin. He didn't have to take her away, but he had to at least protect her. Second, he had to wait for the treasure to appear and help him reach the soul formation stage. Third, he had to help Lin Yang and his old friends from his previous life. Fourth, he had to kill Yan Nanxian and his old enemies. However, the treasure was the most important thing. Before that, he had to keep a low profile and didn't want to cause more trouble. He shouldn't let conflicts erupt and attract the attention of the giants in the 9 heavens. Fine. Come to the Tian Luo sect when you've thought it through. Zhao Feifei sighed helplessly and stood up. Before she left, she shook her head and said regretfully, do you know that my master hasn't wanted to take in disciples for many years? You rejected the Tian Luo sect and my master. Do you know what you've lost? You've missed an opportunity that could save you 100 years of hard work. If I had such an opportunity in the early days, I would have reached the soul formation stage. Jiang Tian shook his head and chuckled. You're you and I'm me. Don't judge me by your standards. To you, joining the Tian Luo sect is an opportunity, but to me, it's not worth mentioning. Humph. You're so full of yourself. Hearing these words, the slight favorable impression Zhao Feifei had of Jiang Tian in her heart was completely exhausted. She coldly snorted, flicked her sleeve and left. After Zhao Feifei left, Jiang Tian smiled and didn't say anything to Guochuandong, who was trying to persuade him. His deep eyes looked at the storm star belt outside the car window and laughed in his heart. In your eyes, remote star areas like the Black Sun star zone and the Milky Way are not worth mentioning. They're insignificant. But you don't know that I've been to the 9 heavens and the supreme realm in my previous life. Isn't the Saint Origin world and the entire central galaxy just like mud? No matter how hard you fight for power, you'll still be mortals. It'll be difficult for you to become deities and deities. There will be a day when your lifespan will run out and you'll die. But for me, in 1,000 or 10,000 years, I'll be a deity in Hongmeng and live forever. Zhao Feifei returned to her room and sat down angrily. What's wrong? He rejected you? Yan Nanxian's face was calm as if he wasn't surprised. That kid looks gentle and humble, but he's actually arrogant. He's made up his mind to not rely on the sects and families. He doesn't take the Tianluo sect seriously at all. How can someone like him live for half a month in the Saint Origin world? Zhao Feifei said with disdain. Stubborn. You really can't carve rotten wood. Yan Beifei also looked disdainful. He smiled and said, this kind of cultivator is very common. They don't know how terrifying the central galaxy is. The Saint Origin world has a lot of soul formation cultivators and saints. All the void-returning saints in the Saint Origin world are enough to suppress a few galaxies. They still think that Saint Origin world is as remote and desolate as their ancestral star. This guy is very strange. He might be the best room for me. Beifei, keep an eye on him, but don't do anything rash. Yan Nanxian said with a deep look. Yes, father. Yan Beifei's expression changed and he quickly agreed. Yan Nanxian closed his eyes and lowered his gaze. He gradually immersed himself in cultivation. His qi was faintly discernible, like an old turtle. Chapter 1832. Sigh. If he had joined the sect, maybe Master would have taught him wholeheartedly. But he rejected Master's offer without hesitation. Master would have no choice but to use him as a tool. Zhao Feifei heaved a sigh and sympathized with Jiang Tian. Xiqing, you won't have a good life after being targeted by Yan Nanxian. Master is just a hall leader in the middle of the Tianluo sect. He has a senior soul formation elder and a void return ancestral patriarch. If they all help Yan Nanxian to deal with you, you won't be able to handle it. She wanted to remind Jiang Tian, but when she thought of Jiang Tian's arrogance when he rejected her, she couldn't help but feel indignant. Good words can't persuade a man who deserves to die. I've done my best. Why do I have to cause more trouble? Besides, if Master knows that I'm secretly sending messages to him, he'll play with me until he dies. Thinking of this, she also threw Jiang Tian to the back of her mind and silently began to cultivate. The next few days were peaceful. 5 days later, the carriage went deep into the storm belt. All along the way, even though they experienced a few demon beast attacks and devil invasions, the sky-treading Pegasus was extremely swift, and the carriage was inscribed with numerous divine formations and holy talismans. Coupled with the fact that Sun Nian and Yan Nanxian were experienced horses that knew the way and commanded them from the center, they could be considered to have passed through the most dangerous area in a mere 3 days. 10 days later, the carriage finally arrived at a star courier station in the Saint Origin continent. At the Gentle Breeze courier station. This is the Saint Origin continent. The spirit qi is so abundant. It's 10 times, no, 100 times denser than the ancestral planet. The Grand Tao laws have been strengthened. I feel that I can only release 1% of my Dharma power and immortal will. This is terrible. I feel like I'm going to vomit blood. Is this a higher level of Dharma laws in Grand Tao? I heard that the Saint Origin continent is only at the edge of the central galaxy. If we enter the central galaxy, we'll have to see the 9 celestial sects and sacred grounds. Everyone was excited and curious as they looked down through the car window. Their faces were filled with joy. Some cultivators were already suppressed by the laws and great Taos. Their bodies glowed as they broke out in cold sweat. They circulated their innate cultivation techniques to resist desperately. The Saint Origin continent was extremely vast. It was only a planet, but its size was already larger than a solar system. Rumor had it that a nascent soul cultivator tried to cross the entire continent using only his body's dharma power instead of a flying dharma artifact. In the end, he failed to do so even after 1,000 years of his life. On the great earth, countless streams of spiritual essence contained the laws of nature. They were extremely pure and scattered down like waterfalls. However, there were traces that could be followed. They all poured into the sect's Tao temples and the aristocratic family cities. Numerous shapeless laws were heavy like iron plates as they lay across the sky, and numerous Grand Tao fragments rumbled and trembled as they emanated the sound of the Grand Tao. Numerous towering mountains towered like swords, piercing straight into the 9 heavens. Half of them were hidden in the clouds, as if the stars, sun, and moon were revolving around them. On top of these famous mountains and great rivers, where spiritual energy was abundant, there were immortal palaces floating about. They were made from an unknown type of precious metal and emitted resplendent rays of light that moved one's soul. Those building materials were common in those sections. But if they were placed in remote galaxies such as the Milky Way or the Black Sun Star Zone, they would be invaluable. They could be made into Taoist instruments or even quasi-saint weapons. High-level cultivators would fight to the death for them. We're finally here. It's worth dying for. Many old cultivators trembled and some even cried. The development of the mortal universe wasn't balanced. It was extremely difficult to become a deity. In his previous life, Jiang Tian was the only one who went through the tribulation to become a deity in 500 years. However, in the past, the entire universe would only have one Tao reunion perfected immortal every few thousand or even 10,000 years. There would only be one Tao reunion perfected immortal every few 100,000 years. All in all, the path to becoming a deity was unpredictable. Many planet regions even thought that the path to becoming a deity was over. They thought that the deity realm in 9 heavens was just a legend and didn't exist at all. For many cultivators, being able to enter the central galaxy, have a chance to see the truth of the void returning level and live for 10,000 years was already an incredible achievement. It was their life goal. There was even a saying of mini-ascension after entering the central galaxy. In the eyes of the cultivators in the remote planet regions, entering the central galaxy was almost the same as entering the deity realm in 9 heavens. And Jiang Tian felt even more complicated. He even felt a sense of homesickness. In his previous life, he had lived in Saint Origin World for too long. He was very familiar with every blade of grass and every tree. He also had many close friends. In terms of time, the time he had lived in Saint Origin World was several times longer than on Earth. However, when his master, the immortal monarch, left him there in his previous life, he had no power at all. But then, he had already formed a divine-grade nascent soul and formed the 3 flowers at one's prominence, reaching the peak. The flying Pegasus slowly landed. Sun Yen and the others said, "Everyone, we've arrived at the divine origin world and the wind courier station. Congratulations, fellow Taoists, for having a bright future in the Saint Origin continent. Cultivate diligently every day and ascend to immortality as soon as possible. Come to our Dragon Gate caravan shop next time, we guarantee you a discount." Everyone got off the flying Pegasus carriage. At this moment, this short-lived group quickly bid farewell to each other and went to different realms. Yang Wu didn't dare to look at Jiang Tian from the beginning to the end. As for whether or not Jiang Tian would take revenge on him for going to his own sect, Jiang Tian didn't care. Jiang Tian was still in the carriage when he noticed that Yan Nanxian and the other 2 were flying away in an aircraft that was even more luxurious than the flying Pegasus carriage. A cold light flashed in his eyes and then he became calm again. I remember that Lin Yang and his sister often hired rogue cultivators when there was an outbreak of demons in Maple City. At that time, I had just started Qi refinement, but Lin Yang took me in as a guard. How could I protect the Lin family and Maple City? Lin Yang and the ancestor of the Lin family, Lin Takong, have been very kind to me. But in my previous life, I didn't know that you were being hunted down by the Tian Luo sect. Even after I knew, I didn't dare to avenge you. But in this life, I've returned strong and I'll help you reach a high position. Jiang Tian sighed in his heart as he walked out of the car and stepped on the solid ground. At this moment, he was holding Jiang Beibei's small hand. He was dressed in an old green robe, and his hair was coiled into a bun on top of his head with an inconspicuous jade hairpin inserted into it. 2 strands of hair hung down on both sides of his face, mixed with silver. Coupled with his deep eyes and deep facial features, he exuded a kind of melancholy and mature charm. However, a big black dog followed behind him, which made him look a little strange. Brother Xiqing, someone is hiring guards? Which family? Is he strong? Can he be a backer? Most importantly, can he get a temporary residence permit? On the other hand, a large fatty followed behind, chattering endlessly while timidly sizing up the surroundings. He was like a large fat rabbit in the forest where wild beasts roamed about, stupid, cute, and vigilant. It made everyone think that they must be new to this place. At the same time, in the square outside Hufeng Courier Station, the surrounding passengers cast their gazes in a certain direction from time to time. There was a shining flying carriage with a divine formation engraved on it. There were also a few golden core stage wine spirit birds parked there. This was a small flying carriage of the Taoist artifact level. It was quite eye-catching in a place like Hufeng Courier Station, but that was nothing. The key was that beside the flying carriage stood 2 stunning beauties, one big and one small. Chapter 1833. The older one looked to be in her 20s. She had a pretty face and a hot figure. She was wearing a tight-fitting combat leather armor, which outlined her exquisite and graceful figure. Her beautiful eyes were deep and calm, but there was a hint of quickness in them. Her movements were fierce and vigorous, giving people the feeling that she was a woman who was not inferior to men. Obviously, she was a person who had been through many battles. If a high-level cultivator was here and scanned her with his divine sense, he would notice that she was already in the early nascent soul realm. Moreover, it was a divine nascent soul realm. She had a bright future and was expected to become a big shot even in the Saint Origin world. The other girl looked like she was only 16 or 17 years old. Her face was still childish, but she was also very beautiful. In fact, her appearance was even more outstanding than the first one. It was as if all the spiritual qi had gathered in her body. Judging from the Dharma artifacts and Dharma treasures, such a beautiful girl seemed to have a great background. Of course, she would attract a lot of attention when she appeared in the square outside the Hufeng Courier Station. If I can get help from such a beauty, wouldn't I be able to save 200 years of cultivation? Moreover, she's not an auntie. Some male cultivators looked at her from time to time. Their faces were filled with infatuation, and their saliva almost flowed out. Some even had the idea of striking up a conversation with her. Don't even think about it. Immediately, a friend pulled him back and warned him with a pale face. Do you know who they are? That little one is Lin Dai, the daughter of the Zhenyuan Marquis Lin Hanqing, the city lord of Maple City. She formed her golden core at 16 and is known as a genius girl. I heard that she has been accepted as an inner disciple by the 9 Mysteries sect, one of the top 10 divine sects. Wow! Lin Yang's sister? The man who was tempted was shocked. If she was an ordinary golden core realm cultivator, it would be fine. However, such a talented girl with an extraordinary background was not to be offended. The ancestors of the Lin family had followed the emperor of the Eastern Empire to conquer the world. In the Saint Origin world, the sects were high and mighty. However, they had reached a tacit agreement with the secular world and would not directly interfere with the secular imperial power. Currently, there were 16 secular empires of various sizes, and they were developing rapidly. The 6 largest empires in terms of overall strength were comparable to the sections. However, in terms of the combat power of the top cultivators, the sects were still superior. For example, most of the saints were in the sects and not in the secular imperial power. Although the Eastern Empire was a secular kingdom, the emperor was a saint. Although the emperor had fallen and turned into Tao, the royal family still kept many great experts. It was said that with a saint in charge, they were almost on par with the celestial Luo sect, Luo Ying sect, and other sacred grounds. The emperor was quite generous. With a wave of his hand, he bestowed the Lin family with an iron rice bowl and the title of Marquis of Zhenyun, which was hereditary. The entire Maple City and the surrounding area within a radius of 10,000 miles all belonged to the Lin family. This Lin Yang was one of the top playboys in the Eastern Empire. It was said that he had cultivated for more than 50 years and barely reached the Golden Core realm. He could be called a useless prodigal. Usually, he never dared to compete with others. He only relied on his family to show off. Moreover, he was a maniac who protected his sister. Rumor had it that a nascent Soul Heavenly Lord once flirted with Lin Dia, so Lin Yang gathered an army and destroyed the nascent Soul Heavenly Lord sect. The big one is even more impressive. She is Count Nan He, the daughter of the Golden Sand City's city lord, Fang Jinlong, Fang Goyu. As soon as these words were spoken, "It's her!" The person who was tempted was so scared that his face turned pale. His legs trembled, and he almost wanted to flee. Count Nan He, Fang Jinlong, was one of the top masters in the Eastern Empire. The Golden Sand Army of the Golden Sand City had 1,000,000 soldiers, including many nascent soul cultivators and golden core cultivators. They were known as the most powerful army in the Eastern Empire. They were considered a giant even in the entire Divine Origin continent, and no one dared to offend them. Fang Goyu's status was only second to some princesses of the royal families. Most importantly, the crown prince of the Eastern Empire, Dong Fang Ding, admired her a lot and said that he wanted to marry her. But for some reason, Fang Goyu had been staying with the Lin family in Maple City for almost a year. Didn't you see the sign? Fang Goyu and Lin Dyer are here to recruit guards for the Lin family. The requirements are nascent soul cultivators or golden core cultivators who are under 60 years old. Besides, the rewards are very generous. They can get permanent residency in Maple City and a lot of cultivation resources as a reward. Someone laughed and said, "You're also a golden core cultivator. Why don't you try?" A guard flirts with a young mistress and wins the heart of a beautiful woman. Isn't that how storytellers usually arrange things? You must be joking. I'm not worthy. The person who was tempted left with a face full of shame. Although he was a golden core cultivator, he was more than 500 years old. He didn't meet the requirements at all. Also, it could be seen that the Lin family wasn't just selecting guards. They were selecting a group of elites. Even in the entire Divine Origin continent, those who could reach the Golden Core stage before 50 years old were very rare and could be called geniuses. Sister Goyu, let's go back. Lin Dyer looked impatient as she scanned the surroundings. We've been to all the relay stations in the Divine Origin continent for the past 6 months. Almost every time a cultivator from outside the central galaxy comes, we've gone forward to recruit, but we haven't found a suitable candidate. You little girl, not all the people have come out yet. Can't you wait? Fang Goyu shook her head helplessly. There's a saying in the Divine Origin continent and even the central galaxy. Outside the central galaxy, there are no geniuses. Lin Dyer frowned. Take a look at the quality of the people who have come. There were a few nascent soul cultivators from outside who tested their power on the stone pillars, but they were all low-grade nascent souls. Some were only at the 5th or 6th grade, which is about the same strength as a 9th grade golden core cultivator. I really don't know what's wrong with the ancestor. He wants us to select the elites from the cultivators from outside the galaxy. He's just picking a general from a group of cripples. Her face was full of disdain and disdain. She looked at the cultivators from outside the galaxy like a fashionable woman in a modern metropolis on Earth looking at a group of primitive African people. Maybe we'll find something. No matter what, we have to follow the ancestors' instructions and go through everyone. In addition, we have to show some respect to these cultivators from outside the galaxy. None of them can be ordinary people if they can step into this place. However, Fang Goyu frowned slightly. She didn't think so. At least, she didn't agree with all of them. The vast galaxy outside the central galaxy was indeed relatively desolate. There were very few heavenly materials and earthly treasures. It was like a remote village. However, saying that there were no geniuses was an exaggeration. Those who could reach the same level in those desolate places often had to put in 10 or even 100 times more effort than the cultivators from the central galaxy. They often had more perseverance and ambition, and their talent and comprehension were even better. Yeah, I got it. Lin Daya respected Fang Goyu very much. She was an amiable elder sister, but also a dignified teacher. Fang Goyu had been staying with the Lin family these days to guide her cultivation. It was also because of Fang Goyu's careful guidance that she broke the record and reached the Golden Core level and was accepted as an inner disciple of the Nine Mysteries sect. However, Lin Daya was still very frustrated and helpless. Just as she was feeling bored, a faint voice suddenly sounded. "Excuse me, are you recruiting guards here? I'd like to apply." All she saw was a middle-aged male cultivator with graying sideburns, chiseled facial features, and calm and deep eyes. He wore a warm smile as he greeted Fang Goyu. He held a little girl who looked like a porcelain doll in his hand. A big black dog with greedy eyes followed behind. Chapter 1834. You have the guts to apply for a job with this kind of quality? He's really confident. Lin Dai glanced at Jiang Tian with a trace of disdain in her eyes. His appearance and aura were ordinary. He did not have the imposing aura of a person who had achieved the Tao. Instead, he gave off the aura of a mortal. His Taoist robe and shoes were not worth mentioning. It was simple and unadorned. Even if there was a faint glow, it was very heterogeneous. The effects of body protection, mind calming, and eyesight protection were extremely poor. They were almost ordinary. In total, it probably did not exceed 20 pieces of top-grade crystal stones. If her close friends who were born in rich and powerful families were here to show off their Taoist robes, shoes, headwear, and bracelets, they would have mocked him. His appearance was not good either. He was at the level of a passerby. If thrown into a crowd, he would be drowned in an instant. Moreover, his eyes were exceptionally deep and vicissitudes of life. His real age should be older than what he looked like. Moreover, she scanned Jiang Tian with her divine sense a few times and did not detect any aura of a cultivator. This person should only be in the foundation establishment stage, or even lower. He could not be compared to the descendants of the aristocratic families in the Eastern Empire. Not to mention Li Yichen, the eldest senior brother of the Nine Mysteries sect. I'm sorry, we only want cultivators below the Golden Core stage. You don't meet the requirements. Let's go. Lin Dai suppressed her disgust and said coldly, "Isn't there a test stone tablet here? I wonder if I can test it?" Jiang Tian turned to look at the woman who had liked him, hurt him, and was forgotten by him and asked indifferently. In his previous life, Jiang Tian was only able to establish a relationship with the Lin family after he had reached the foundation establishment stage. At that time, Jiang Tian was injured while hunting demonic beasts. Lin Yang rescued him and brought him home. Lin Dai had already joined the Nine Mysteries sect. However, at that time, Lin Dai seemed to have been abandoned by the sect's eldest senior brother, Li Zhi. With the sect's special permission, she returned home to heal her injuries and met Jiang Tian. At that time, her heart was empty. Coupled with Lin Yang's intention to matchmake them, and although Jiang Tian's cultivation was only at the foundation establishment stage at that time, he showed great talent in cultivation. She couldn't help but have feelings for Jiang Tian. However, Jiang Tian did not accept her feelings and kept a distance from her. On one hand, he understood that she was only using him as a substitute for eldest senior brother to fill up the emptiness in her heart. Secondly, it was because of the guilt he felt towards Zhao Xueqing that he could not accept other women. Most importantly, he felt that this woman was fickle in love and was definitely not a good match. It turned out that Jiang Tian's guess was right. She didn't know what was wrong with Li Yichen. He wanted to reconcile with Lin Dai, and came to visit the Lin family. In order to show that someone loved her, Lin Dai deliberately said how Jiang Tian pursued her. Li Chen was unhappy and directly broke Jiang Tian's dantian. Although the ancestor of the Lin family, Lin Takong, personally healed Jiang Tian, Lin Yang was so angry that he wanted to fight with Li Yichen. However, Lin Dao, who caused all of this, was indifferent to the seriously injured Jiang Tian, as if those vows did not exist. She immediately returned to Li Yichen's side and married him. They were inseparable and became a much-told story in the Eastern Empire and even the Saint origin world. Later, because Jiang Tian cultivated the cultivation method passed down by the immortal emperor, he broke through very quickly and soon suppressed Li Yichen and Lin Dai. However, for the sake of the ancestor of the Lin family and Lin Yang, Jiang Tian did not seek revenge on Li Yichen. However, Lin Dai's fate was extremely miserable. When Yan Nanxian of the Tianluo sect destroyed the Lin family, Lin Dai hoped that Li Yichen and the Nine Mysteries sect would help. However, Li Yichen flatly refused. When Lin Dai argued, Li Yichen flew into a rage and killed his wife. Perhaps Lin Dai was still full of shock and disbelief before she died. However, for many outsiders, they had already seen it clearly. Li Yichen quickly married Yan Nanxian's daughter, and with the help of Yan Nanxian, killed his master and many elders, and took the position of the leader of the Nine Mysteries sect. Later, he used the power of the sect to help Yan Nanxian become the leader of the Tianluo sect. For a time, no one in the Saint origin world could suppress Li Yichen and Yan Nanxian. It was not until Jiang Tian cultivated hard for 100 years and obtained the opportunity to enter the Hengyu immortal sect and reached the divine transformation realm that he got rid of the two people and swept the two holy lands. However, now that Jiang Tian recalled the events of his previous life, he felt like he was in a trance, as if it was a dream of 1,000 years. As a person of two lives, Jiang Tian had experienced too much. Whether it was in his previous life or now, in his opinion, Lin Dai was just a passerby in his life. Why would he be entangled with such feelings? However, although she had hurt him, he was still the blood of the Lin family. The Lin family ancestor and Lin Yang had been very good to him. In his previous life, he had also implicated the entire Lin family. In this life, no matter what, he had to protect him, push Lin Yang to a high position, and revitalize the entire Lin family. Little sister, don't be rash. Lin Dai wanted to ridicule him, but she was glared at by Fang Goyu, so she did not dare to speak. Fang Goyu nodded slightly at Jiang Tian and said, "Sir, you can try." Jiang Tian nodded and waved his hand, and an invisible wave of Dharma power blasted toward the stone tablet. This stone tablet looked ordinary, but it was actually refined from a 10,000-foot mountain and inscribed with countless array patterns. It could completely withstand the attack of a divine transformation realm expert. It could also calculate the limit of Dharma power. With a muffled sound, the stone tablet trembled and shone brightly. Then, a few lines of words appeared in the air. Middle Stage Golden Core Realm. Grade, unknown. What? Middle Stage Golden Core Realm. Fang Goyu was completely stunned and could not believe it. That was because she did not realize that Jiang Tian was so powerful. His eyes have seen the vicissitudes of life, and his temperament is gloomy. I'm afraid he's at least a few hundred years old. Even if he reaches the Golden Core Realm, it will be difficult for him to improve. Lin Dai felt disdain in her heart as she communicated with Fang Goyu through her consciousness. The older a Golden Core Realm cultivator was, the more time they spent practicing outdated techniques, and the harder it was for them to disperse their original techniques and adapt to the excellent techniques of the divine origin realm. In theory, they even hoped to obtain some foundation establishment realm geniuses to make it easier to cultivate. Unfortunately, foundation establishment realm cultivators had short lifespans. Even if they used hibernation cabins or methods to stop their lifespans, they would not be able to sustain a long voyage to the central galaxy. Therefore, even if Jiang Tian was really a Golden Core Realm cultivator, if his lifespan was too old and his thinking was too rigid, it would be difficult for him to disperse his techniques. Fang Goyu ignored him and said with a smile, "I wonder how old you are this year. Can I test it?" As she spoke, she took out an exquisite box-shaped Dharma artifact. The universe was vast, and each planet's rotation and orbit were completely different, so the measurement of time was also different. However, the central galaxy had already produced many Dharma artifacts to test a cultivator's true age. Of course, Jiang Tian smiled faintly and flicked his finger. A bead of blood floated into the box. A moment later, the test results came out. With a flash of light, a line of droplets appeared in the air and formed a line of words. According to the time of the divine origin realm, the tested person has a lifespan of 20 years. Hearing this, Fang Gouyu and Lin Dai were shocked and could not believe it. What a good seedling! After 10 years of cultivation, won't he have a chance to reach the nascent soul realm? After 100 years, won't he have a chance to see the truth of the soul formation realm? We found a treasure. Fang Gouyu and Lin Dai's eyes lit up and they could not help but smile. Chapter 1835. A soul formation cultivator was already a giant in this world. Fang Gouyu and Lin Dai didn't dare to hope that Jiang Tian would become a soul formation cultivator. But a nascent soul cultivator was still within reach. And in the entire Lin family, a nascent soul cultivator could already be a servant and be treated as an equal by the head of the family. There weren't many nascent soul cultivators, especially rank 9 ones, in the entire Lin family. Most importantly, cultivators from the outside like Jiang Tian were usually very hardworking. No matter if it was building or repairing, guarding the city, hunting demon beasts, or exterminating bandits, he would always take the lead and actively perform. Because there was a trace of inferiority in their bones. They cherished their hard-earned life very much. They were also very easy to satisfy. Employers often only needed to provide them with housing, household registration, and enough resources to support their cultivation. There were many nascent soul cultivators from outside the central galaxy. But one had to know that Maple City was only the territory of a marquis. There were dozens or even hundreds of such cities in the Eastern Empire, not to mention the entire Saint Origin continent. In short, recruiting cultivators from outside the galaxy was a two-way choice. Outstanding nascent soul cultivators were also looking for a better backer. It depended on the conditions given, the amount of cultivation resources, and the strength of the backer. They might not be interested in the Lin family of Maple City. Fellow cultivator, how should I address you? If you want to join Maple City, you can register your identity now. Fang Gouyu smiled and said, with your strength, you can get a dojo and be exempted from paying taxes every month. Also, you'll be rewarded with 1/2 kilogram of high-grade spirit stones. I'm Siqing Wanderer. Jiang Tian smiled and said, this is my daughter, Bebe. This is my pet. He made up another story. Of course, it was the Black Sun Galaxy. She and Lin Yang are really a pair of idiots. He looked at Fang Gouyu and smiled bitterly in his heart. He was very emotional. Fang Gouyu and Lin Yang were childhood sweethearts. In the eyes of many people, Lin Yang was a good-for-nothing, while Fang Gouyu was a genius female cultivator. The two weren't a good match at all. But matters of the heart were just that strange. Fang Gouyu and Lin Yang had a very good relationship and loved each other deeply. Fang Gouyu was staying in the Lin family now to avoid Crown Prince Dongfang Ding. However, Fang Gouyu and Lin Yang's resistance was useless. In the end, Fang Gouyu still married Dongfang Ding and became the crown princess, and then the imperial concubine. However, during one of the kingdom wars, he personally led the troops and died. This was also Lin Yang's lifelong regret. He had always suspected that Fang Gouyu was actively seeking death. One had to know that if she had committed suicide, her family would have been blamed by the Eastern Imperial family. That was why she had openly died in the arena. Thinking back carefully, in his previous life, when Yan Nanxian of the Tian Luo sect attacked the Lin family, the entire Dongfang royal family and the various aristocratic families did nothing. It was very likely that it was Dongfang Ding's orders. In Jiang Tian's impression, Dongfang Ding was a narrow-minded person. Very soon, Fang Gouyu took out a jade slip and quickly helped Jiang Tian make an identity jade slip. Her status was revered, So the Department of Investigation Services and security guards of Maple City all sent people to accompany her. She also carried the magical artifacts used to make identity jade slips with her. He reached the Golden Core realm in his 20s. How enviable! He doesn't need to be an illegal resident and can freely enter and exit large cities. He also doesn't need to face demon beast attacks in the wilderness. Sigh, can't compare. For a moment, many cultivators from outside the galaxy looked at Jiang Tian with envy. They had been looking for a backer for a long time, but they still couldn't find one. Their faces were full of fatigue and dust. However, Jiang Tian had easily found a backer as soon as he got off the Pegasus flying carriage. Even though they were considered the overlords of their respective starfields, they were nothing here. Many of them were practically refugees. The natives of Saint Origin, even mortals, had household registers and could live in cities. Outsiders had to exchange their strength for the right to live in cities. At this moment, Guochuandong also quickly walked up and smiled. I am Guochuandong, and I am from the same hometown as Xiqing. I am also willing to join the Lin family of Maple City. Soon, Guochuandong also passed the assessment and successfully joined. After all, he was a nascent soul cultivator and could serve as a guardian. Then, Fang Goyu looked at the desolate station and smiled. You should be the last group of cultivators who came from Bamboo Horse Star to Saint Origin World. There are no more cultivators left. Let's go to Maple City. Okay. Jiang Tian and Guochuandong nodded. After getting on the carriage, the flying carriage rose into the sky. The wind spirit bird flapped its wings and flew towards the depths of Saint Origin World. Along the way, Guochuandong pulled Fang Goyu and Lin Dyer to ask about Maple City, the Eastern Empire and Saint Origin World. Jiang Tian sat in the back seat and chatted with Lin Dyer for a while. After that, he didn't say a word. After all, he had stayed in Saint Origin World for a long time in his previous life and knew a lot about it. He had also fabricated his own background. Regarding the Black Sun domain, the ancestral planet, he adhered to the principle that the more he spoke, the more likely he would make mistakes. Therefore, he was unwilling to talk too much about it. Jiang Tian smiled apologetically and moved aside with his daughter in his arms. He closed his eyes and slowly adjusted his breathing as if he was cultivating. Lin Dyer waited for a while. Seeing that he didn't want to talk, she turned her head and looked out of the window. Although this cultivator from beyond the Milky Way was very young and talented, she was very popular in the Eastern Empire. In addition, she had high standards and strict rules. Although she was curious about Jiang Tian, it wasn't to the extent that she would take the initiative to talk to Jiang Tian. Besides, no matter how strong the cultivators from beyond the Milky Way were, they still couldn't dominate the central galaxy. For millions of years, there were only a handful of cultivators who could really become giants in Saint Origin World. Maybe he is playing hard to get and trying to attract my attention by acting alone? Unfortunately, I only admire those who are really capable, such as a genius like Li Yichen. At best, you can only be my family's servant. Lin Dyer snorted in her heart and a trace of disdain appeared in her eyes. But in fact, Jiang Tian didn't care about her at all. He was thinking about the problem of cultivation. The treasure that could be called an immortal material was indeed about to come into being. If he remembered correctly, it was at the evil-infested ridge. That year, in order to obtain this treasure, the experts of the sacred grounds, divine sects, and even the great empires fought until their brains were broken. Countless almighty cultivators fell. It could be said that the Saint Origin World set off monstrous waves and dyed thousands of miles with blood. Jiang Tian was very clear about the characteristics and origin of this treasure. He had stayed in the Saint Origin World for 100 years and entered the historical archives of the various countries. He read the scriptures of the sects and also found fellow cultivators to learn about all kinds of cultivation secrets. It could be said that he had thoroughly grasped the history of the Saint Origin World for hundreds of thousands of years. With this immortal material, reaching the spirit-severing realm would be as simple as piercing through the window paper. However, in order to reach the spirit-severing realm, one must first become immortal. Jiang Tian was now at the pinnacle of the nascent soul realm with the three flowers at one's prominence. Moreover, it was a divine nascent soul, just like the child of a true god. However, in Jiang Tian's opinion, he still needed some time to reach the mortal transformation realm. During this time, he needed to temper his state of mind and take care of his daughter's growth. While he was deep in thought, a magnificent city appeared in front of him between the towering mountains. Rows upon rows of palaces and residences flashed with the light of treasures, just like the palaces of immortals. He had arrived at the Eastern Empire. Chapter 1836. The mountain range was continuous, lofty, with towering peaks standing in great numbers. It was a common sight. The entire divine origin world was extremely vast. Even Jiang Tian's immortal will could only cover a small part of it. Many invisible essence chi flowed between the cloud sea mountains like waterfalls. The Grand Tao was as tough as steel, and it was 10 times stronger than on Earth after the spirit chi recovery. Countless cultivators flew in the sky. There were plenty of nascent soul cultivators among them. Outside of the central galaxy, they could be famous on a planet and dominate an entire region. Soul formation cultivators weren't rare. Numerous majestic cities stood in great numbers. Their designs were either simple and ancient, as if they had experienced the passage of tens of thousands of years. Their surfaces were covered in the marks of blades and swords, and they silently spoke of a long history. Some were filled with a modern feeling, and their lines were smooth and lofty, as if they came from the future. Many cities were guarded by soul formation cultivators. Even though they were in a dormant state, they still emitted some energy as heavy as mountains, which made the cultivators feel it and not dare to offend them. The central galaxy is indeed the central galaxy. Soul formation cultivators haven't appeared on my home planet for tens of thousands of years. Once they appeared, they were invincible and dominated a planet region. But here, they're just guarding a city. There are probably less than 10 of them in the entire Eastern Empire. Guochuandong sighed again and again. He was so excited that the fat on his body trembled. The Eastern Empire was vast and had a radius of 1,000,000 miles. There were many majestic cities and defense lines, like a torrent of steel. Its social system was similar to the feudal system of the ancient Wuxia. Many duke and marquis families controlled the land, and there were 108 marquises protecting the royal family. Red Maple City was located in the Red Rock Basin in the south of the empire. There was a Xianxia forest with a radius of 100,000 miles in the Red Rock Basin. It was rich in resources and people lived in peace. There were many talented cultivators. Surrounding this forest were Blue Wave City, Red Maple City, and Jianghan City, 3 pillars of power. Red Maple City was only a medium-sized city. Lin Dyer and Lin Yang's father, the city lord of Red Maple City, Marquis Zhenyuan Lin Hanqing, was a superior being in the eyes of ordinary people, but he ranked 37th among the 108 marquises. The 2 city lords and marquises of Jade Wave City and Jianghan City were much more advanced. The city lord of Cerulean Wave City was ranked 15th among the many dukes and marquises. The city lord of Jianghan City, Zishan Marquis, was ranked 4th. He could even suppress a duke. This kind of ranking was not random, nor was it done without reason. Instead, it was determined by their cultivation and the overall strength of the city. Jianghan City. When they were passing through the Xianxia forest, Jiang Tian suddenly opened his eyes and glanced at the celestial seal characters above the city gate. In Jiang Tian's memory, Jianghan City was one of the top 5 cultivation cities in the empire. It was said to have 18 spirit gathering arrays and 9 city defense arrays. The density of spiritual energy there was more than 10 times that of Maple City. Any dojo or mansion could be sold for millions of superior-grade crystals. As if sensing Jiang Tian's gaze, Fang Goyu introduced, of the 3 cities in the Red Cliff Basin, the most prosperous is Jianghan City. Even in the entire Eastern Empire, Jianghan City ranks in the top 5. She looked worried and said in a low voice, "The city lord of Jianghan City, Zishan Marquis, Shinhigu, is at the soul formation level and is on par with my father, Fang Jinlong. Shen Higu recruited many cultivators from the famous sacred grounds and divine sects of the divine origin continent, not just the Eastern Empire. They are all soul formation cultivators, real giants, and there is more than one of them. In recent years, they have shown signs of catching up. But Shen Higu has always been rebellious. Jiang Tian thought to himself. In his previous life, Shen Higu had launched a mutiny 30 years later, causing heavy damage to Maple City and many other cities. They went straight to the imperial city and almost ousted the Eastern royal family. That was also a bloody battle. Countless soul formation and nascent soul cultivators died in that battle. Even Fang Goyu's father and the ancestral patriarch of the Lin family were seriously injured. In the end, it was the self-detonation of a great saint of the imperial family that killed Shen Higu and extinguished the flames of war. But the Eastern Empire was greatly damaged and hadn't fully recovered in 100 years. He smiled faintly and said, "How can I allow others to sleep beside me? If Shen Higu has any rebellious thoughts, he will attack those close to him. I'm afraid the first one to suffer will be Maple City. When I have time, I will suppress this person for Maple City and even occupy his city." If it was in his previous life, Jiang Tian would have run as far as he could when facing Shen Higu. But now, it was different. As long as he broke through to the soul formation realm, even if he was half a step away, killing Shen Higu would be a piece of cake. He could even sweep the entire divine origin continent and destroy all the divine sects and sacred grounds. How can this person be so sharp? Sure enough, although the cultivators outside of the river live in desolation, they often face more cruel competition. None of them can reach the golden core or nascent soul stage. Fang Goyu was slightly stunned when she heard this. She didn't expect Jiang Tian to judge the political situation of the empire just by listening to a few words. In fact, her father Fang Jinlong and the ancestor of the Lin family had the same judgment. The reason why Fang Jinlong asked her to come to the Lin family was to suppress Purple Marquis. However, she did not think that Jiang Tian had the ability to suppress Shen Higu. She said half jokingly and half seriously, "Okay, Xiqing, you have to keep your word. If one day you reach the soul formation realm and suppress Jianghan City, the Lin family and the Fang family will be the real giants of the empire and the empire will be safe and peaceful. At that time, you can bring your partner and we will travel the world together. We will leave the divine origin continent and go to the territories of the 9 divine sects. Unlike now, we have to guard the city, protect the mortals, kill the monsters, and kill the rebels. We don't have a moment of free time." Lin Dai listened and couldn't help but frown slightly. Shen Higu was a peerless master in the empire second only to Fang Jinlong. Even the elders of the divine sects were not inferior to him. Perhaps only the sect leader could suppress him. Among the same generation, even the most talented nascent soul stage genius like Fang Goyu wouldn't dare to make such a claim. Perhaps only Crown Prince Dongfang Ding had such courage. Cultivators from remote star regions don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Reaching the golden core stage at the age of 20 is naturally extraordinary, but from the golden core stage to the nascent soul stage, and from the nascent soul stage to the soul formation stage, each step is like a natural chasm. Looks like it's another arrogant person who likes to spout nonsense. She was disappointed. She thought she would meet a special person, but she didn't expect that he was no different from those small fries from remote villages. However, Jiang Tian didn't care about what she thought. He revealed a bitter expression and said sadly, "My cultivation partner is already in another world." This was not an exaggeration. The Hengyu celestial sect was located at the core of the central galaxy and was separated by countless star regions. The difficulty of reaching the Hengyu celestial sect from here was no less than ascending. In addition, he was now pretending to be Xiqing from the Black Sun star region, so he had to change all the information and not reveal any real information at any time. After all, the real grand cultivators could see the stars as if they were reading the lines on their palms. Who knew if the immortal monarch and the other grand cultivators wouldn't release a strand of thought to observe the mortal world? "Fellow cultivator Xiqing, Please restrain your grief. Birth, old age, illness, and death are human nature. If you don't go through the tribulation to become an immortal, no one is exempt. I'm sure your partner in heaven would be happy to know that you've arrived at the central galaxy and embarked on the path of cultivation. However, Fang Goyu misunderstood and hurriedly said. Chapter 1837. Although Fang Goyu said so, she looked at Lin Dai, meaningfully, her heart burning with passion. No matter what, the Lin family should win over Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian reached the golden core stage at a young age. Although his cultivation was not very high, his talent was extraordinary, and his future was limitless. Lin Dai was young and beautiful, and without a cultivation partner, she could not help but imagine. In her opinion, Jiang Tian and Lin Dai were indeed very suitable. If Jiang Tian came from a noble family or a sect on the mainland, his roots were too deep, and the Lin family would face the danger of being swallowed up. But he was like duckweed in the water, and it was better. If he married into the Lin family, then the Lin family would be his backer, and wouldn't they be loyal? Just as she was thinking, she suddenly saw dozens of flying boats pulled by wind spirit birds rapidly flying past. Banners stood in great numbers, and on the leading flying boat, a red banner fluttered in the wind, with the words, Xianxia, Lin, written on it. Brother is here to pick us up. Lin Dai could not help but jump up and smile happily, taking the lead to walk out of the cabin. Fang Goyu was also full of joy, and followed her out. Maple City's welcoming party was extremely luxurious. Numerous flying boats traversed the void. All of them were at the Dao treasure level. They emitted resplendent light like small suns. There were hundreds of cultivators on them, and almost all of them were above the foundation establishment stage. The leader was a white-haired old man who was half a step into the soul formation stage. Many cultivators gathered their auras, and waves of vast mana waves swept across a radius of hundreds of miles, scaring many golden core-level beasts in the forest. Some crawled, some ran, and some flapped their wings to escape. But Jiang Tian's gaze fell on a young man beside the old man. This young man had sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes, and he was handsome. He was tall and straight, but he had a sense of roguishness. He was dressed in a very luxurious robe, and there were all kinds of jade pendants, rings, necklaces, and so on. They had many functions, such as speed, defense, attack enhancement, spiritual backlash, and so on. He was armed to the teeth, and almost all of them were Taoist artifacts. Even if a soul formation cultivator attacked him with all his strength 10 times in a row, he would not be able to kill him. There were also several followers at the peak of the nascent soul stage around him. All of them looked unfriendly and were acting like henchmen, which made him look even more majestic. However, this kid was only at the first level of the Golden Core realm. He held a folding fan in his hand and waved it elegantly, looking like a refined scum. He smiled and said, "Sister Goyu, Sister Dai, you're finally back. I miss you so much. Were there any lechers who molested you along the way? Tell me, and I'll lead the army to flatten them." Young Marquis, the son of the city lord, Lin Yang. Jiang Tian's eyes flickered with complicated emotions. There was joy, regret, and deep regret. In his previous life, Lin Yang had given him a lot of help and support, and was like a brother to him. However, because Jiang Tian had offended Yan Nanxian, an innocent person like him was killed. Even the Lin family of Red Maple City and the bloodline of Zhenyuan Ho were completely cut off. I didn't kill Boren, but Boren died because of me. Indeed, I am not the root cause of Lin Yang's death and the destruction of the Lin family. The fault lies with Yan Nanxian. However, I cannot absolve myself from the blame. I owe Lin Yang too much. In this life, I will make it up to you. At least, I will make you a giant in the Saint Origin realm, and let you enjoy glory and wealth for generations to come. Jiang Tian's eyes were deep as he made up his mind. You only think about fighting and killing every day. You're only at the Golden Core realm, okay? The flying boats from both sides converged and hovered in the air. Fang Goyu flew over and punched Lin Yang in the chest as she said with a tender smile, You're a nascent soul realm prodigy, your strength is as great as a mountain. Go easy on me. This punch caused my true essence to collapse, and I nearly died. Lin Yang covered his chest and joked. I was too harsh. I'm really sorry. In the future, I will be careful when dealing with you. Fang Gouyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I was almost killed by you. Your apology is useless. If you feel guilty, then hurry up and marry me. You also know that I like your body the most. Big breasts and perky buttocks. You can give birth. Besides, my cultivation is too weak and I need a woman to protect me. Lin Yang's stinky mouth was never serious when he opened his mouth. Hearing this, Lin Dai frowned and Fang Gouyu blushed. She stamped her feet and said angrily, Lin Yang, if you dare to be so ambiguous, I will complain to Uncle Lin. See if he doesn't hang you up and beat you. Lin Yang was very afraid of his father, Zhenyuan. He smiled and said, Okay, let's not talk about it. Sai, I've been stuck at the first level of the Golden Core realm for more than 10 years. Every time he sees me, it's like I'm the enemy who killed his father. If you complain again, I'll be dead. After joking for a while, Lin Yang said seriously, How are the results of this trip to recruit guardians? This is the Golden Core Realm Cultivator, Xiqing. She's only 20 years old. This is the Nascent Soul Realm Cultivator, Guochuandong, 500 years old. Fang Gouyu introduced. Jiang Tian bowed slightly and said with a smile, Greetings, young duke. Lin Yang closed his folding fan and clapped it in his right palm. His face was full of joy. He said with a smile, Not bad. You're only 20 years old, but you're already at the Golden Core realm. You're even stronger than me. Your future is limitless. If you follow me in the future, you'll live a good life. I will definitely protect the Lin family with all my heart. Jiang Tian cupped his hands and said. Lin Yang nodded and pointed to the white-haired old man. He said with a smile, This is the head of our Lin family's guardians, half-step soul formation realm cultivator Zhang Linfeng. In the future, you'll listen to his orders and receive his guidance. He knows many Golden Core realm cultivation methods, and he can teach you all of them. Jiang Tian nodded slightly. Zhang Linfeng's aura was as majestic as a mountain, and his face was arrogant. He looked up and down at Jiang Tian and suddenly asked, You're all from the Black Sun sector? Indeed. Jiang Tian nodded. Hearing this, Zhang Linfeng frowned. With a slightly disgusted and disappointed expression, he said coldly, Miss Gouyu, in the future, it's best if you choose guards from the rogue cultivators of Saint Origin World. Cultivators from remote places are just like ants. It's hard for them to achieve great things. They can't be compared to the rogue cultivators that the young duke and I have recruited. After saying that, he flicked his sleeves and entered the cabin. He didn't even bother to pay attention to Lin Yang. Lin Yang smiled awkwardly and said with a smile, Zhang Linfeng is from Saint Origin World and has always looked down on foreign cultivators. However, you don't have to worry about him. If you follow me, no one will dare to provoke you. Jiang Tian naturally didn't care. In fact, he knew very well why Zhang Linfeng had such an attitude. Although Zhang Linfeng's cultivation was strong and he was the head of the Lin family's guardians, Zhenyuan had always been using foreign cultivators to fill the guardians' ranks. Because the foreign cultivators had a more clean background, he felt more at ease using them. Before this, whether it was sects, sacred grounds, or noble families, there were many cases of cultivators from hostile forces pretending to be rogue cultivators to infiltrate. In the end, the infiltrated forces naturally suffered great losses. Zhenyuan loved Lin Dyer very much and didn't want his daughter to marry far away. He even wanted to find a foreign cultivator to be his son-in-law. However, Zhang Linfeng's son, Zhang Min, had always liked Lin Dyer. Therefore, Zhang Linfeng and the others hated the foreign cultivators' guards. However, in Jiang Tian's opinion, these were not the most important reasons. They were only superficial reasons. Because as far as he knew, this person seemed to have played a very dishonorable role in Purple Marquis's betrayal in his previous life. It seemed that Purple Marquis had set up a spy in Maple City's Lin family. At a critical moment, He had plotted against the Lin family's ancestor. Where there were people, there was politics. Even a small marquis clan was filled with internal strife and intrigue, plotting against each other. Chapter 1838. At that moment, they were only 10,000 miles away from Maple City, but with the Wind Spirit bird flying boat, a magnificent city appeared in front of them in just half an hour. This city was incomparably grand, and it far surpassed the ruins capital in the ruins of immortality. It was grand and vast, and the city walls were an entire 3 kilometers tall. They were cast from golden water, and they emitted a dazzling glow. Numerous talisman markings were inlaid on the city walls, and they were carved into a complicated talisman formation. They contained powerful fluctuations of magic energy that surged into the sky. The soldiers stationed on the city walls were wearing golden armor with maple leaf patterns engraved on them. Every one of them was at least at the foundation establishment level, and there were countless golden core cultivators among them. They were riding on flying swords and flying boats, moving as fast as lightning. The city covered an area of 1,000 miles, and the buildings were more than 1,000 meters tall. Mortals and cultivators lived together, far surpassing the bustling metropolises on Earth. One by one, the great city-protecting formations were nested with each other. Formless dermic power waves were vast and mighty, enveloping the entire city. It was difficult for anyone to fly in without being detected. However, the house of Jinyuan Ho wasn't a tall building, but a manor. However, with the protection of the arrays, it was difficult for cultivators to see it even if they were at a high place. It covered an area of a few hundred acres and was made up of several courtyards. There were rockery and strange stones, orchids and orchids. Qilins, cheongqis, dragons and other auspicious beasts were guarding. The buildings were even more simple and exquisite, like a celestial palace. Numerous merit steels were carved with vivid and lifelike reliefs. Every word was like a gem, inscribed with the glorious achievements of the Jinyuan Marquis lineage, and exuded the vicissitudes of time. When Jiang Tian and the others landed on the square in front of the ancestral hall, a group of black-armored cavalrymen immediately came to greet them. Dozens of cavalrymen were wearing heavy dark iron armor, and even their mounts were wearing armor. Blue scales could be seen from the gaps in the armor of these warhorses, which were heavy and sonorous as if they were made of gold. They also had long antlers on their foreheads, which made them look extremely majestic. Apparently, they were the primeval ages mutants with the blood of the flood dragon. They were omnipotent and could travel hundreds of miles in a second. Young Duke Misdai, Miss Goyu. The leading knight dismounted from his horse and strode over. His momentum was so strong that even Guochuandong was forced to take a few steps back. He turned out to be a peak nascent soul stage cultivator and a 9th grade nascent soul stage cultivator. His combat power was superior to ordinary divine transformation stage cultivators. Such a person would be a 1-star tyrant outside the central galaxy. When his eyes swept over Lin Dyer, there was a flash of adoration and passion. Daoist Siqing Daoist Gua, this is Zhang Muyun. He's the son of Guardian Zhang, and also the inspector of Maple City. He's in charge of all the cultivator armies. We must get along well with each other in the future. Lin Yang introduced with a smile. At this moment, Fang Goyu swept her gaze over the crowd and smiled. Since Guardian Zhang and Inspector Zhang are both here, I propose that Siqing alone serve as Lin Dai's guard captain. From now on, Patrol Inspector Zhang would focus on the city's defense. Consecrator Zhang, immediately assign him a residence and predict the payment of crystals for that month. He came to protect Miss Lin? Zhang Linfeng's eyes showed some mockery, but he just shook his head and didn't say anything. After all, Fang Goyu was an honored guest of the Lin family, and behind her stood the great Nanhe Bo Fang Jinlong. He didn't dare to offend her easily. His cultivation is not even as high as mine, and he wants to protect me? Lin Dai, who didn't like Jiang Tian very much and wanted to refuse. But she immediately realized that her future sister-in-law Fang Goyu was unusually smart and meticulous. She must have her reasons for making such an arrangement. Jiang Tian had an indifferent attitude. He cupped his hands slightly and said, "I will obey Miss Fang's orders." Zhang Muyun's face flashed with a gloomy look, and he was extremely unhappy. Because he had always been in charge of guarding Lin Dai's residence, this was also the best opportunity for him to get close to Lin Dai. Now that it was taken by Jiang Tian, how could he be happy? He looked at Jiang Tian and suddenly took a step forward, shouting, "As far as I know, those who are not nascent soul stage cultivators can't cross the star sea and reach the star station. This wanderer Xiqing is only at the golden core stage. Is she hiding her cultivation?" As soon as these words came out, everyone showed a few strange expressions. "Is he still at the nascent soul stage?" Lin Dai said in disbelief. "First, miss, you'll have to ask him." However, deliberately hiding his cultivation and sneaking into the Lin family, I'm afraid he harbors evil intentions and has other motives. Zhang Muyun took another step forward and said in an overbearing manner. As soon as he said this, Lin Dai and the others all took a few steps back, looking at Jiang Tian warily. One had to know that when they were recruiting guards, every cultivator would do their best in hopes of being recognized by their master. If he deliberately hid his strength or cultivation, it would be too strange. This kid is not an idiot. With just a few words, he isolated me. Jiang Tian thought leisurely, but he said calmly, "If the gold core is beyond the 9th level and reaches the sacred level or the deity level, it will be able to cross the sea of stars even with the best flying magical artifacts. There are precedents before." Hearing this, everyone was stunned and couldn't believe it. There were such precedents. Could it be that Wanderer Xiqing really has the legendary saint or celestial grade golden core? That's too unbelievable. Zhang Muyun, on the other hand, laughed mockingly. "Kid, do you know what a saint or celestial grade golden core means? Even in the saint origin world, it only appears once every 100,000 years. It's difficult to breed a dragon in shallow water. How can a phoenix be raised in a forest? How can a remote place like the Black Sun Star Field give birth to a saint or celestial grade golden core? What a joke! Tell me, why did you hide your cultivation and deliberately deceive Miss Lin? Do you want to steal from the Lin family?" What Nephew Muyun said makes sense. The few elders present all nodded in agreement. They were all rogue cultivators in the saint origin world and were supporters of Master Zhang Muyun. They were clearly different from the rogue cultivators from the outside world and were used to fighting for power. Could it be that this person is really not a good person? Lin Dai was surprised and then thought sarcastically, "What a pity. Even if you hide your cultivation and are really a nascent soul cultivator, sneaking into the Lin family is just walking into a trap. There are so many nascent soul cultivators and even half-divine transformation cultivators here. What can you do?" Fang Goyu was so angry that her face turned red. She shouted, "Zhang Muyun, what do you mean? She's a talent I recruited and has passed my test. There's no problem. You keep saying deceive. Are you saying that he's a swindler, or are you doubting my judgment and motives? Miss Goyu, although your cultivation is good, you have too little experience. You don't know that people in the cultivation world are sinister and easy to be deceived by scoundrels." Zhang Muyun was sure that Jiang Tian was under control. He laughed and said, "If Xiqing is really from the Black Sun Star Field, you can hand over your sect or family identity token for me to verify. Many sects and families in the Black Sun Star Field also have identity tokens. I've seen some of them before. Besides, you've come to the Bamboo Horse Planet from the Black Sun Star Field. You'll get a lot of documents to prove your identity." As soon as he said this, everyone looked at Jiang Tian worriedly. Even Fang Goyu and Guochuan Dong were a little nervous. Chapter 1839. What Zhang Muyun had said was indeed true. Whether it was the sect token or the customs clearance document, they could prove one's identity and could not be faked. However, Jiang Tian had not appeared from the beginning to the end, and all of them were rejected as itinerant cultivators. Jiang Tian held his daughter's hand with his left hand and put his right hand behind his back. He was indifferent. "If you don't have these, You can also let me search your soul to verify its authenticity. Zhang Muyun took a step forward. His nascent soul roared, his dharma shook, and his hair fluttered in the wind. He looked like a god of war. He looked at Jiang Tian mockingly as if he was looking at an ant. Or, you can fight with me with your golden core cultivation. I want to see how strong your golden core is and whether it is the legendary divine grade golden core. Let everyone see it. As soon as he said this, Guochuandong's fat body trembled. He secretly thought that this person was ruthless and wanted to kill Jiang Tian. To cultivators, soul-searching was a great humiliation. Jiang Tian would never agree to it. However, if Jiang Tian could not prove himself, he could only fight with Zhang Muyun with his golden core cultivation. In other words, even if Jiang Tian was a nascent soul cultivator, he could not use the Dharma laws and Forbidden Zone. He could only seal his cultivation and fight with his golden core Dharma form and True Yuan. This was tantamount to hitting a rock with an egg and asking for trouble. Because even if Jiang Tian did not suppress his cultivation, he might not be able to win against Zhang Muyun, let alone suppress his cultivation. As for Zhang Linfeng and the other consecrators from Saint Origin World, they were secretly praising and gloating over Yi Shiwen's misfortune. After all, Jiang Tian belonged to a different sect. Killing one of them was better than killing one of them. They did not want him to suddenly become stronger and replace them. As for the consecrators from outside the river, although they sympathized with Jiang Tian and hated Zhang Muyun to the core, they did not dare to voice their anger. Each and every one of them had a bitter and desperate expression on their faces, and their bodies were shivering like quails in the cold wind. Under the tyrannical power of the Zhang father and son, they were firmly suppressed. It was difficult for them to even survive, so how could they dare to stand up for Jiang Tian? How dare you brag that you have a sacred grade golden core? A sacred grade golden core can indeed suppress a nascent soul cultivator. However, you have to have this bone structure and aptitude. That is an existence that is 1 in a billion. Lin Dyer's eyes were cold, and she did not speak to Jiang Tian. She was easily swayed by Zhang Muyun's words. Besides, she didn't like how Jiang Tian looked calm and indifferent, but was actually cold and arrogant. I'm your mistress, and I'm so beautiful, yet you don't hurry to kneel down and suck up to me. Instead, you put on airs and think of yourself as noble and virtuous. Aren't you looking down on me? Brother Mu Yun, it's common for cultivators to hide their roots and cultivation. Siqing might have some hidden troubles, but he might not have any bad intentions. Why do you have to be so aggressive? I order you to leave now. After this, I will verify your identity again. However, Fang Gouyu couldn't stand it anymore and shouted directly. Nobles have families, but not countries. Zhang Muyun was unmoved and retorted with a faint smile. I take the salary of the Lin family and Maple City, so I naturally serve the Lin family. I am responsible for the safety of the people of Maple City. Although Miss Fang is the daughter of Count Nanhe, and although Count Nanhe's title is higher than the Lin family, I don't take the salary of Count Nanhe. Your words are useless to me. Lin Yang was so angry that his nose was crooked and his whole body trembled. He pulled Jiang Tian behind him and firmly protected him. He pointed at Zhang Muyun with his folding fan and shouted angrily, Zhang Muyun, from now on, Fang Gouyu is my wife, the future marquis, and your mistress. Her words are my words. Don't you dare to disobey. Previously, his father Lin Hanqing had talked to him and told him to be wary of Master Zhang Muyun and recruit rogue cultivators from beyond the river so that he could control the important positions of the family and the city as soon as possible. He didn't believe it and thought that his father was just worrying for nothing. However, today he saw the big picture. He increasingly felt that the executive group was too powerful and firmly controlled by the master of the Zhang family. Today, they were just ignoring the master's authority. In the future, they might turn against the master. I will give face to the young master. Seeing that Lin Yang had stepped forward, Zhang Muyun couldn't make a move. Besides, his consideration was very simple. He only wanted to embarrass Jiang Tian in front of Lin Dyer and make him lose face, so that Jiang Tian wouldn't one day get lucky and win Lin Dyer's heart. Therefore, his goal was achieved and there was no need to pursue. However, insults and ridicule were unavoidable. He immediately laughed and said, "Coward. A dog-like thing without any real ability. You only know how to wag your tail and please the master to get the master's protection. However, you have to be careful, I will keep an eye on you. You have a dirty mouth, you should slap it." Jiang Tian suddenly raised his eyelids and snorted. "What? Slap? How dare you?" Zhang Muyun suddenly turned around and stared at Jiang Tian like a wolf choosing its prey. His nascent soul roared and his spirit embryo roared. He was about to draw his sword and attack. He was a master at the peak of the nascent soul stage. He controlled the law and had the forbidden area. His power was earth-shattering. Once he was angry, he immediately felt the connection between heaven and man. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. It was as if a demon god had descended, making the other cultivators tremble and want to kneel down and worship him. Why wouldn't I dare? But Jiang Tian gave a light laugh and suddenly made his move. The reason why Jiang Tian had been holding back was actually not because he was worried about exposing his cultivation and arousing Lin Yang's suspicion. After all, Lin Yang was a pure and sincere person. Moreover, he was indeed a cultivator from beyond the river and had no connection with the forces of Saint Origin World. Lin Yang wouldn't suspect him at all. He just wanted to trigger the potential conflict between Zhang Muyun and the Lin family, or rather, expose the ambition of the father and son of the Zhang family. Then, Lin Yang, Lin Hanqing, and even the ancestral patriarch of the Lin family would notice. Jiang Tian's attack was very simple. He didn't use the divine laws of the nascent soul level or even the essence qi of the golden core level. Instead, he suppressed his divine powers to the level of a mortal and only relied on his physical strength. He stomped on the ground. The square carved with countless complicated rune arrays and made of the meteoroids in the cosmic storms, which could withstand a nuclear explosion, immediately collapsed into a deep pit 10 meters in diameter. Everybody was knocked over and fell to the ground in embarrassment. Jiang Tian had already shot out like a bolt of lightning. Seeing this scene, Zhang Linfeng and the other elders' expressions changed drastically. They turned pale with fright and shouted, "Ying, be careful." It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the power of Jiang Tian's stomp could flatten a 1,000-foot mountain and destroy the city wall of Maple City. This kind of power was beyond the golden core level. No matter how strong you are, you're just a golden core cultivator. How can you be more powerful than my supreme laws? Zhang Muyun naturally understood this as well, but he did not panic. Instead, he sneered coldly. He sneered, but he didn't hesitate at all. He opened his hands and shouted, "Cloud Hand, Magic Cloud Law." His fingertips like an eagle's claw cracked the air and a nascent soul forbidden region was formed. Layers of space piled up like clouds, which seemed light but were actually extremely heavy and indestructible. Not even a normal soul formation cultivator would be able to break through it. And yet, it was useless under Jiang Tian's attack. Jiang Tian's chaotic divine body had reached the phenomenal success level. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he was like a god from the divine world. How could normal cultivators resist him? Jiang Tian's body slammed forward, and the forbidden zones in front of him were torn apart like paper. Then, they exploded, and everything within a radius of several hundred meters became a mess. If it weren't for the arrays in the mansion suppressing the power of the forbidden region with powerful laws, dozens of miles would have been razed to the ground. Amidst Zhang Muyun's panicked sharp cry, and under the gazes of disbelief of everyone present, Jiang Tian was like a mad dragon that approached Zhang Muyun, and then he raised his hand and fiercely slapped Zhang Muyun's face. Swish! Zhang Muyun was sent flying thousands of meters away as if he had been hit by a meteorite. With a loud bang, his sturdy body smashed a big hole in the courtyard wall of the mansion. He turned into a rolling gourd and disappeared in the billowing smoke and dust. Outside, thunderous noises rang out incessantly. Mushroom clouds rose continuously, walls collapsed, and houses collapsed. The noises only stopped when they were 10 miles away. In a blink, the entire square went silent. Chapter 1840. No one dared to make a sound. They were all dumbfounded and their jaws almost fell to the ground. Zhang Myun was one of the most powerful cultivators in Maple City after the ancestral patriarch of the Lin family, Lin Hanqing and Zhang Linfeng. Not even the soul formation cultivators in Jianghan City could defeat him so easily. No way. He didn't use any Dharma laws or essence qi. He's just using his physical strength. What kind of monster is he? Is he really a sacred grade golden core or even a deity grade 1? Damn, when did the cultivators from outside of the river become so powerful? Zhang Linfeng and the other local guards were frightened and couldn't believe it. Zhang Linfeng looked at Jiang Tian as if he were looking at a monster. He was shocked, angry and sad. For the first time, he realized that the little white rabbit that he could easily crush to death was actually an ancient divine beast that was brandishing its claws and seemed to be able to swallow the heavens and the earth. The guards from outside of the river, including Guochuandong, were shocked as if they had seen God. Although they were all consecrators, they had been bullied by the Zhang father and son for far too long. However, they didn't dare to voice their anger. Today, Jiang Tian had done what they wanted to do but didn't dare to do, what they dared to do but couldn't do. This made them feel proud and elated. It was as if they had eaten ice cream in the summer. Such a powerful body. Is he really a sacred child? Fang Gouyu and Lin Yang looked at each other and were overjoyed. They had thought that Jiang Tian was an ordinary golden core cultivator, so they were overjoyed. To their surprise, Jiang Tian had a high-grade golden core. They only wanted a leaf, but Jiang Tian gave them a forest. Lin Dyer's beautiful eyes were also shining as she stared at Jiang Tian, full of admiration and favor. As for Zhang Myun, she couldn't be bothered to look at him a second time. The value of a 9th realm nascent soul couldn't be compared to a holy grade golden core. Plus, Jiang Tian had easily sent him flying with a slap, which proved that his strength was not something Zhang Myun could match. Kill him immediately. Otherwise, it will affect our grand plan. Zhang Linfeng's heart suddenly hardened. His son's injury was a small matter. More importantly, he and Purple Marquis still had a grand plan that could be ruined by Jiang Tian. When he thought up to here, he took a step forward and shouted coldly, "My son only wants to spar with you and test your background and cultivation. Yet you're so heavy-handed. I'm afraid you're trying to destroy the Lin family's protection. Everyone restrain this kid. I'll deal with him after I interrogate him." When everyone heard this, their hearts skipped a beat. Many people sighed in their hearts. He was indeed worthy of being an elder of the same generation as the Marquis of Zhenyun, a peerless cultivator who was half a step away from the divine transformation realm. His attacks were ruthless and vicious. He actually wanted to besiege Jiang Tian. Lin Yang was so angry that he jumped 3 feet high. He coldly shouted, "Zhang Linfeng, stop. Siqing Sanren is a seed that we intend to nurture. How can you kill the innocent? My father is not here. I can enforce the law on behalf of the master and clean up the emperor's subordinates." Zhang Linfeng's hair flew in anger. His face was as cold as iron and his killing intent was dense. He was completely unmoved. "Young Marquis, quickly retreat. Don't be deceived by this scoundrel. If we fight and injure you, it won't be good. If you want to kill him, you'll have to step over my dead body first. How dare you disobey my orders? Are you trying to kill your master?" Lin Yang was so angry that his entire body trembled. He took a few steps forward and blocked in front of Jiang Tian. Fang Gouyu also took out 2 curved blades and stood side by side with him, ready to fight at any time. Zhang Linfeng was still unmoved. His cold gaze swept across the many protectors and guards. He coldly said, "Prepare to attack. Remember, don't hurt the young Marquis and Miss Fang." Clang, clang, clang. In an instant, the local protectors, dozens of nascent soul cultivators, including the patrolling black-armored soldiers, all pulled out their long swords and soared into the air, surrounding Jiang Tian. Their laws were either as red as fire, as cold as a glacier, as heavy as a mountain, or shining with silver light. Every one of them was incomparably powerful. They interfered with the heaven and earth and crushed the space. The mana fluctuations were strong and mighty, pressing down like raging waves. This scene made many people suck in a breath of cold air. Many protectors and family members with lower cultivation retreated and hid in the protective array, afraid of being caught in the crossfire. Guochuandong and the other guards who came from the other side of the river all showed a sorrowful expression. They looked at Jiang Tian sympathetically and worriedly. Zhang Linfeng was a half-step divine transformation cultivator. Together with dozens of nascent soul protectors and protectors, his strength was enough to fight against an ordinary divine transformation cultivator. This Xiqing Sanren was made of iron. How many nails could she crush in her body? She could only die here. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Just as Jiang Tian was about to make a move, suddenly, a shout came, "Stop! Jinyun Ho is here." A tall and mighty middle-aged man with gray hair, wearing a luxurious robe with a qilin embroidered on the chest, came over on a sword. He said with a smile, "Brother Linfeng, it's inevitable that someone will be injured in a fight. Why do you have to be so calculative with a kid and make things difficult for a junior?" He was also a half-step divine transformation cultivator, but his majesty was more profound. It was a huge aura that had been cultivated by being in a high position for a long time. "My father is here. It's okay," Lin Yang said to Jiang Tian with a happy face. Zhang Linfeng could only put away his weapon and bow deeply. "Greetings, my..." The other elders and protectors showed some reluctance, but they didn't dare to disobey Marquis Jinyuan's order. They all took a few steps back and half knelt on the ground. Marquis Jinyun Ho Lin Hanqing floated down, put away his flying sword, glanced at Jiang Tian, frowned and reprimanded with seemingly displeasure. "Child, although your cultivation is strong and your cultivation is heaven-defying, you can't be so cruel and ruthless. We're all family. Look at how you beat Zhang Muyun. I heard that your constitution is extraordinary, and I wanted you to be the deputy head of the protector group. Now it seems that you're not worthy of being a guard of my Lin family. Marquis Jinyuan is right. I was rash." Jiang Tian cupped his hands in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing, and did not refute. Because he knew that Marquis Jinyuan was very kind, and this statement was just to appease Zhang Linfeng. Sure enough, when Zhang Linfeng showed a bit of pride, Lin Hanqing said coldly, "In my opinion, I still have to punish you heavily and temper your temper. Start from the bottom. From today onwards, you will be Lin Dyer's sparring partner, the lowest level of 5th level guard." When these words came out, everyone had different expressions. Zhang Linfeng looked as if someone had stuffed a mouth full of feces. Zhang Muyun, who had just arrived, looked like a fried bitter gourd. The other native elders and protectors also had ugly expressions. "You call this a heavy punishment? This is simply a heavy reward, okay?" 5th level guards were indeed the lowest level of guards. Needless to say, their status was low. Their monthly salary was only enough to cover their daily expenses. It was very difficult for them to even buy heavenly materials and earthly treasures for cultivation. However, it was different for a sparring partner. They could share cultivation techniques with their master, share elixirs, weapons, and other treasures. They could use them at will, and even receive guidance from a master. Otherwise, if the sparring partner's strength was too weak, how could they fight with their master and stimulate their potential and be a trial? It could be said that the potential benefits were not even comparable to the head of the protector group. "Daya, Xiqing, do you have any objections to this arrangement?" Lin Hanqing looked at Lin Dyer with a kind smile in his majesty. "Regarding cultivation, Dyer will listen to father's arrangements." Lin Dyer's pretty face showed a bit of shyness and joy, her beautiful eyes rippling as she glanced at Jiang Tian with extraordinary splendor, as if facing her idol. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.